Today we start the Glory Hunter series, a challenge to win the league and cups in all of the top 5 countries, as well as the Champions League and Europa League. And we have 20 seasons to do it. But I'm not going to do the international trophies like the World Cup because international management sucks in Football Manager. Last year we started in the Bundesliga with Dortmund, so I ideally want to start at a team in another league. And when I asked you guys on Twitter or the YouTube community page, one team was mentioned quite a lot. So I went with a suggestion and I became the manager of AS Roma in Italy. After their win in the EC2 last year, they qualified for Europa League. And they boast a very strong squad with the likes of Tammy Abraham up front, Lorenzo Pellegrini as a star midfielder, and new signing Paulo Dybala. Plus they also have El Shaarawy, who for some reason I thought was in his mid-30s. Turns out he's only 29 and he's an asset for us this season. There isn't a lot of money in the budget though, but maybe enough for one signing. Now usually my transfers are looking at to developing youngsters or really expensive first teamers, but now we might not be at clubs very long. We could buy experienced older heads who cost a lot less money. But remember, we are checking the job center every single month. Because this is Glory Hunter, we could move to a club with better opportunities to complete one of our trophies at any moment. For now though, I've built a tactic to suit our Roma side. 3 at the back with 4 across the defensive midfield with 3 attackers and 1 main striker. I did feel that we were light at the back, so I went in and I put a bid in for Inter Milan defender De Vrij, who is in the last year of his contract, and eventually negotiated a good contract with the Dutchman. And before you know it, I got our guy. An extremely experienced centre-back aged 30 with great qualities and someone who brings the ball out of defence, all for around £12 million. Inter Milan are favourites for the title this season with champions AC Milan in 2nd, and we are currently predicted in 5th. And in our first game of the season, it's Cremonese who we kick off our Glory Hunter journey against. With Wijnaldum injured, our lineup has slightly changed from our strongest 11, but I'm still confident as Tammy Abraham kicks off our season. And in my first game, we broke some records. Now don't get me wrong, the defence and as you will see from the goals we scored, the keeper we played were absolutely tragic. But we still completely dominated with 30 shots and Tammy Abraham scored 4 goals on the opening day, and we broke the record for the biggest win in charge of my first ever match. We had Napoli coming up in our 4th game, but until that we can enjoy smashing Sassuolo 3-0 with Dybala picking up another 2 goals to take his tally to 4 goals in the first 2 games as well. And with a 2-0 win against Spezia, with their goalkeeper making 12 saves, we take a trip to Naples to play Napoli. But much to my surprise, it only took us about 13 minutes to open the scoring through Pellegrini. It stayed 1-0 until the second half, but once again, it was us who ripped up our opposition and Lorenzo picked up a second, the bloody legend. What a start we had, winning all 4 games so far without conceding a goal. Our Europa League group has been drawn, and it's Feyenoord who lost in that EC2 final last year to Roma, as well as Fenerbahce and Ammonia from Cyprus. The transfer window closed and it's just 1 transfer in. After a 0-0 draw against Feyenoord, Tammy Abraham scored the only goal of the game in Turkey to give us 4 points from the first 2 games of the Europa League. I absolutely love him. Next up, it's the derby though versus Lazio. In what tends to be a very competitive match, we made it very clear for our local rivals having Tammy Abraham fit and on fire. He scored 2 goals before half-time, then he decided he wasn't done. He picked up his hat-trick right after and getting a 4 for good measure, putting us 4-0 up. Lazio star striker Immobile did finally pick up a consolation goal, but it's early bragging rights to Roma and off to face the champions. We allowed Tammy the pleasure of welcoming Milan to the Olimpico just 11 minutes in, although soon after Roger Ibanez went in a bit overboard and we got a straight red card. Fear not though, because the Lazio goal we conceded is still the only league goal we have let in, and Tammy scores again. It's 2-0. With another win against Torino and then Monza, is a semi-difficult run finish with some amazing results, and the games to come all being very winnable. The 2 Europa League games in October ended with 2 more wins and 5 more goals for Tammy Abraham. He was there to score 2 more goals against Lecce in a 3-0 win, and then he got 4 away to Sampdoria. And then in the Europa League, he got himself yet another hat-trick against Fenerbahce, scoring 9 goals in the first 5 matches of this competition and helping us guarantee qualification for the group alongside Feyenoord. After Mady Camara got himself a straight red card, we dropped our first first points in the Serie A against Bologna. And after 11 games, we still sit top, just 4 points ahead of Atalanta, while Juventus sit bottom of the league, only just managing to finally get into positive points. Oh, and Tammy Abraham has 18 goals so far in the league as well. Let's see if we can top our Europa League group with our last fixture in Rotterdam. We just need a draw to do so, but Feyenoord are going to make it difficult for us, and their counter-attack is finished with a goal. However, with plenty of time remaining, we progress possession down the left-hand side, and Cristante fires home an equaliser. And it's straight to Bergamo for a surprise top-of-the-table clash against Gasparini's Atalanta, without top scorer Tammy Abraham, who isn't fit enough to start. And that clearly proved costly, as Atalanta were much the better side, scoring immediately after half-time from Duvan Zapata. We pushed for an equaliser, but Atalanta are a cracking side, and Toloi scored a second, and we take our first loss of the season. Still, without Tammy, we beat Verona 2-1 before the World Cup break, but our eyes are already set on the return, with Juventus and Inter Milan being the first 2 matches. Our lead for now is cut down to just 2 points. The first few managers departed, including Tottenham, but that's not a job for me, thanks. They currently sit in 8th place. Barcelona currently top Spain, PSG in France, but it's Leipzig in front in the Bundesliga, with Bayern sat in 3rd. But this was my reaction to who won the World Cup. Because Senegal beat Germany in the final. I'm not even joking. They knocked out Wales, France, and Portugal on their journey to the final as well. England were knocked out by the Netherlands in the second round, probably because they weren't playing Tammy. Anywho, it's January, and so many clubs want him after his 30 goals this season. In fact, we have loads of offers coming in, including for Pellegrini too, who's having a great season as well. I reject all of them, including this embarrassing attempt by Inter Milan to buy Mancini. We return to the Serie A with a draw against Juventus. We conceded the opener by Rabiot and relied on 19-year-old Australian Volpato, who scored the equaliser and got man of the match. We got the same result against Inter Milan as well. Back on track though with a 3-1 win against Udinese and another 2 goals from Tammy Abraham. In fact, he scored another 5 in the following 2 games, including 2 in the Cup. We are back in form. Wrong! We lose 1-0 to Salernitana. After another draw to Empoli, we face a difficult February with Inter Milan in the Cup next and league games against Napoli and Lazio. And we've dropped to 4 points behind Atalanta at the top of the table, while Juventus could seriously get relegated this season. It was snowing in Milan, and in the freezing cold weather, you still can't stop Tammy Abraham. However, you also can't stop Inter Milan slicing through your defence and equalising. And with this Coppa Italia matchup being rather important to Glory Hunter, I was worried when Thomas Lemar scored a second. However, just before half-time, Dybala pulled it back to 2-2, and in this cup tie, it went to extra time, where of course it was Tammy Abraham who notched his second and knocked out Inter Milan. The Thomas Lemar transfer to Inter Milan reminded me that this is Glory Hunter. We need to be keeping an eye on the world of transfers as well, like this one with Unai Simon going to Newcastle and Man City making some very odd signings. We followed our great triumph in the cup with a draw to Sassuolo. But with the tough games coming up, we were at our best again, like this 2-0 win over Napoli. Tammy Abraham with the first goal, of course, and then a rocket was struck by substitute Matic. It was derby time, and once again Tammy meets a near post corner after only 3 minutes. And we can take the bragging rights this season because Brian Cristante scored a second just after 15 minutes. Nemanja Matic didn't score a rocket in this game, but he did get himself a straight red card. Typical. Turned out to be a great month with 2 other wins and no goals conceded in our last 4 games, with AC Milan, the champions, up next. We have been drawn against Marseille in the Europa League and also have Milan in the Coppa Italia too. And we are back to just 2 points behind Atalanta. But then it all started to go wrong. Well, the Milan game wasn't too bad. Dybala gave us the lead, but the champions came back just after 5 minutes and played great football and equalised. But it was the Marseille game that was the big problem. Tammy Abraham, with no one around him, pulled up with an injury. That was just 4 minutes in as well, but we fortunately still had players on the pitch who could score goals, but Marseille still managed to bag another equaliser. And Tammy's injury is a bad one, tearing his quad, which puts him out for the rest of the season. In the second leg against Marseille, they took the lead from kickoff as well, but thankfully Tammy's replacement, Belotti, stepped up, and even though he hasn't had a lot of game time this season, he has still looked sharp. He scored an equaliser and a winner in this 2-1 win, but I still fear for our rest of the season. We already dropped 2 more points against Monza, and we have Milan in the Coppa Italia next, and Napoli in Europa League. Oh, Milan, they absolutely battered us, knocking us out of the Coppa Italia. And we even lost in the league to Spezia. But what a game against Napoli, and what a performance from Dybala, who got that crazy assist. Unfortunately, we couldn't clear our lines though, and Napoli got a deserved equaliser. And when the second half kicked off, they put themselves ahead. But again, Dybala came up with a beautiful assist for Andrea Belotti to make it 2-2. And to crown off his performance, he then scored a wonderful finish, and it's 3-2 in the first leg. Napoli started the second leg, bringing the score back to 3-3 on aggregate. But Andrea Belotti stepped up once again, and he scored 2 goals, sending us into the semi-final of the Europa League. In the league, we still trail Atalanta in this mad title race by 3 points, with Inter Milan right behind us breathing down our next. And our next fixture is Atalanta. The Europa League draw gave us a tricky tie against Manchester United, but our focus should have been on this league match first, which maybe I'd question wasn't the case, because Atalanta came to the Stadio Olimpico and pretty much dominated the match, and Rasmus Højlund got 2 goals himself. He's been on form this season with 14 goals in just 9 starts and is wanted by so many clubs across Europe. And that loss affected us, and we dropped more points against Juventus. Considering our defence has kept so many clean sheets this season, we were very poor against Inter Milan. Thankfully though, we pulled the game back to 1-1 through Volpato. We then lost 7-1 to Manchester United. Although we did pick up some league wins heading towards the end of the season, Atalanta won that title race with a game remaining, and we bow out of the cup competitions in the semi-finals. After beating Empoli in what seems like a bit of an underwhelming end of the season on the final day, we actually came with just a point behind the champions, who win the Scudetto for the very first time. And Tammy Abraham, who hasn't played a league game since February, finished the league top scorer. But hold on for just 1 second, because I take a gander at the job centre, and AC Milan are currently looking for a manager. Do we risk the move just a season into Glory Hunter, or do we stay with Roma? Season 1 of Glory Hunter started with a bang, but unfortunately no Serie A for AS Roma. No trophies at all, in fact. Not very good for the Glory Hunter. And with AC Milan having a managerial vacancy, I seriously considered applying for. I actually applied for 2 jobs, but neither of them were AC Milan. Because so soon after the sacking of Pioli came the sacking of Inzaghi at Inter Milan. And I couldn't resist, and I applied for the job. But unfortunately I was unsuccessful, and I didn't make the shortlist. They went with Diego Simeone instead. I then couldn't believe my eyes when Napoli paid £30 million for Eric Dyer. So I thought I'd focus on my own transfers at Roma, and I attempted to bring in Matoma from Brighton. Brighton somehow got relegated, finishing in 20th place in the Premier League. But as soon as I bid, so does Real Madrid. And Matoma breaks Roman hearts and signs for them instead. But then I noticed the new manager of AC Milan is Christophe Galtier, which means the PSG job is available. And the Atletico job, but I didn't want to go there. So I of course applied for the PSG job too. But they hired the Lille manager Petkovic instead. So I think I'll just stay put for now. I made 2 signings, starting with a loan with centre-back Badiashile from Chelsea for a season. But the second I am excited about, as he used to be one of my favourite players, Hakan Çalhanoğlu from Inter Milan. I may have slightly overpaid, but after not getting Matoma, he was my #1 target. Remember last season when we broke the record in our first match? Well, we destroyed that in our first game of the season this year. We beat Empoli 10-0, and Tammy Abraham scored 6 goals. Crazy. Inter come in with bids for Roger Ibanez, but I declined. I did, however, sell Justin Kluivert to Marseille for £12.75 million. The Champions League draw is made, and we find ourselves in Group A with Bayern Munich, Sporting and Sparta Prague. Transfer window closed, and some huge deals were done this summer, with Ronald Araujo moving to Man City and James Maddison to Tottenham. And with a rather easy September, the month of October starts with FC Bayern Munich, followed by Inter Milan. I said it was easy, but we started September with a draw against Fiorentina after they took the lead from this free kick rebound. Hakan Çalhanoğlu capped off his Champions League debut for us with a little goal against Sparta Prague, and Tammy Abraham picked up our second in the 2-1 victory. Tammy also carried on scoring a ton of goals, including a hat-trick against newly promoted Regina in a 5-0 away win, with other goals scored by Dybala and Pellegrini. Tammy Abraham in fact scored in every game other than the 1-0 win against Sassuolo in what turned out to be a great great month for us, only conceding 2 goals. It seems the upcoming match against Inter Milan will be an important one for the early frontrunner in the league, while champions Atalanta currently sit in 11th place, already losing 3 games, and Tammy can boast about 13 goals in just 6 matches. But before the clash of Inter Milan, we welcome Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich to the Stadio Olimpico with a Pellegrini opening goal. All quiet into the second half, and there's our star striker scoring again, but with just 2 minutes left, our defence held them to a clean sheet and Dybala makes it 3. A trip to the San Siro was always going to be difficult, and Inter Milan snatched the lead through Fran Navarro. But we needed a bit of luck, and we got that when Tammy Abraham's shot rebounded off the post back into his path. The score stayed 1 apiece, and with 2 wins following that, meaning we kept our unbeaten run with champions Atalanta coming up in November. Our attention until then was placed on the Champions League, and Hakan Çalhanoğlu loves scoring in this competition, and we secured another 3 points over Sporting with a Belotti second. Inter Milan surprisingly dropped more points after our draw and more positions, falling down to 4th place with Sassuolo, the unlikely title chasers with us so far. The game going into the Atalanta clash was a very unconvincing win against newly promoted side, down to 10 men after taking the lead against us. I feared the worst as Gasparini's Atalanta team ripped through us for Duvan Zapata dispatch after just 20 minutes. We did equalise though right after half time, and I will give you 3 guesses who scored it, and I bet you got it in 1. But enough celebrating, you fools, because we've got an unbeaten run to protect here, and Ademola Lookman just ended that with Atalanta's second goal. I mean, that is all your fault, I blame you. How did we react though? We went and smashed Salernitano 9-0. Well, technically we played Sporting in the Champions League in between, where Dybala missed a penalty. Thankfully for him, it didn't cost us any points as we marched on within 10 minutes and scored and ran the game quite comfortably, only allowing them 5 shots and scoring 3 of our own, ending in El Shaarawy's 93rd minute finish. We did unfortunately also lose in our next Champions League fixture when we visited Bayern Munich. Our run coming up is very hard with Lazio, Milan, Napoli, then Juve, all back to back to back to back. And 2 wins by just a goal as we go into the Lazio derby match. After defeating them twice last year, they are going to want revenge, and Felipe Anderson set them out for that just after 4 minutes. But fear not, we win a penalty and Belotti steps up to take it. Oh, for flub's sake.
He's bloody missed it! What a prat!
Okay, on to the AC Milan match, and Abraham means business today. His second goal was quite a hilarious counter-attack really, but his third was just beautiful to watch. We go into the new year top of the league by 5 points ahead of 3 separate teams, and all the way down to Napoli are still fighting around the top positions. And yes, that is Tammy Abraham on 26 league goals so far. Anzalewski has the most assists in the league, and it's easy to see why against Napoli when he gets another. Then I think we can all agree that Hakan Çalhanoğlu wins goal of the season. That goal is insane. Napoli at this point got themselves down to 10 men thanks to a straight red card to Elmas, and we took advantage of that, scoring a 3rd through Dybala, and a 4th from the ever-scoring Tammy Abraham getting his 28th league goal. Shockingly, he didn't even score against Juventus, but fear not, my Glory Hunter friends, because 2 of the other lads made sure to chip in and give us 3 wins from the 4 tricky games in a row. Not bad really. January after those 2 fixtures became a lot less difficult in terms of opposition, but we still somehow dropped points to Monza, Torino in the quarterfinals of the Coppa Italia though, and Leipzig in the Champions League knockouts. The Monza goal was only the 9th goal we have conceded this season in 21 matches. And transfer-wise around the world in January, I was shocked to see Kimmich move for over £100 million to Man City, with Declan Rice and Højlund moving the other way to Bayern Munich. We actually spent a bit of money on deadline day though, bringing in legendary midfielder Toni Kroos to help us over the line and win us some trophies this season. In the Coppa Italia against Torino, we got the business done early in the quarterfinals, fairly easily really, and it was of course Tammy Abraham who secured our progression with another hat-trick and 2 goals from corners. Despite losing their main goal for it, Atalanta still caused us problems, taking the lead just before half-time in the Serie A. We could only muster up 1 goal ourselves thanks to Volpato, and it took until the 81st minute before we rescued the point. This 1-1 draw was a sign of the wheels potentially coming off for our season though, because the end of the month included back-to-back losses and a 5 goals conceded in the 2 games either side of our Champions League first leg match. Now, we of course have one of the world's best strikers, but as do Leipzig, and a very similar style of striker in Benjamin Sesko, who scored 2 goals, putting Leipzig up in the first half. We managed to get a goal back in Germany, but we still trail in the second leg 2-0, and that's 3 losses in a row. And after our couple of league losses recently, our rivals Lazio are now just a point behind us, and we have Inter Milan up next, followed by the semi-final of the Coppa Italia against Fiorentina. The game against Inter Milan went a lot better than I expected, with Pellegrini notching the first 3 minutes and Tammy Abraham scoring our second in a 2-0 win in the first half. But stop what you are doing right now, because Tammy Abraham has just scored a header from outside the box in the semi-final of the Coppa Italia first leg. Not to mention Dybala's second was decent too, and we take a 2-0 lead in the first leg. We ruined that great win against Inter Milan with 2 0-0 draws in the league against Torino and Genoa. The 7-0 win though was needed, as we have Lazio coming up, and our last 4 games include Milan, Juventus and Napoli. Back to the Champions League second leg against Leipzig, and Tammy brings us level on aggregate, and just as the referee was prepared to blow his whistle to go into extra time, Abraham scores a winner. And the draw pits us against Barcelona in the quarter-finals. And we go into the first leg off the back of a 5-0 win against Salernitana. We started the home leg with a really fortunate goal, which goes down as the goalkeeper's own goal, but we will still take it. And right after half-time, we strike again, doubling our lead through Volpato. Barcelona gathering themselves, and within 10 minutes, Pedri scored an outrageous finish. But when Hakan Çalhanoğlu stands over a free kick, anything can happen, and we go into the second leg with a 3-1 advantage. Straight into the second leg at the Camp Nou then, and we extend our aggregate lead to 4-1. And then, would you believe it? At this point, you'd think we'd be a shoo-in for the semi-final. But when Kingsley Coman scored 2 right after half-time, we put the pressure on ourselves, and Pedri levelled the tie with just 10 minutes left. And in the 92nd minute, Lewandowski scores a penalty and knocks us out of the Champions League. I am gutted. Dry those tears though right away, because we will be in the Coppa Italia final after another win in the second leg of the semi-final. What about the league though, Luke? Well, it's derby day, and Lazio in second place takes the lead. But the weird shot crossed that then got tapped in, and the tide was turned. And what a ball for Tammy, who bagged a second. Seemingly, we were still on top going into the final stage of the match, and El Shaarawy scored a third, and there was still time for centre-back De Vrij to score from range thanks to a goalkeeper blunder. 4-1. And we complemented that derby win against Lazio with 2 1-0 wins. And Lazio dropped more points and fell to 4th place, now 10 points behind us. We lead the title race 5 points clear with 4 games left, and Tammy Abraham has 43 goals. But we now have Milan, Juventus and Napoli, as well as Milan again in the cup final in our sights. You would have seen me belting down the touchline when Tammy scored against Milan just after 7 minutes in, but then you would have also seen my hands on my hips clueless at how Badiashile scored an own goal for their equaliser. While Napoli in second place closed the gap to 2 points. Toni Kroos and his exceptional passing set us on our way to a win against Juventus, as this time we capitalised and scored a second. Juventus came back with a goal of their own, but Belotti secured the vital 3 points. Napoli also won, but our focus now goes to the Coppa Italia final. And I couldn't have dreamt for a better start when Tammy Abraham put us 1-0 up after 5 minutes into the Coppa Italia final. Abraham was fantastic again, snatching the ball off the defence and taking it to the byline before cutting it back for Çalhanoğlu to blast in a second. Milan did score a penalty just 20 minutes into the match though, but we hold on all game and secure the first trophy of Glory Hunter. The Coppa Italia is ours thanks to this fantastic Roma side. But will Napoli stop us from doing the double in the next match? That scary attacking pairing of Kvaratskhelia and Victor Osimhen sauntered through our defence 20 minutes in and took the lead, putting us level on points. And then Hakan Çalhanoğlu made things even harder, picking up a straight red card. But we somehow got ourselves a penalty and Cristante dispatched it. But in the 85th minute, we also gave a penalty away, and Napoli also didn't miss. Thankfully, with the league being sorted by results between teams, the 4-0 win we got earlier this season means we still sit top on the final day. But we seriously need to beat Verona to win the title. And Napoli, they need to beat Inter Milan away. The games had just kicked off when news came through that Inter Milan scored in the first minute against Napoli. And just 5 minutes later, Abraham scores at the back post. He also hounded the defence and scored a second after just 12 minutes. Verona gave us a little anxiety scare when Duda scored a penalty, but all that was washed away when Toni Kroos played a beautiful cross for Tammy Abraham to score his hat-trick and hand AS Roma the Scudetto. Simeone also did a solid for us, and his Inter Milan side held on against Napoli too, giving us clear daylight in the league title standings. And Tammy Abraham, he finished on 48 league goals. And it turns out that was Simeone's last thing he did before he got sacked. And once again, I was making this face looking at the job centre. But before then, let's celebrate the fact we have done the double in just 2 seasons in this Glory Hunter journey. And we add 2 trophies to our Glory Hunter cabinet. What a great start. But do we now resign? Because if we take a look at the available jobs, there is Lyon and there is Chelsea. What would you do? Let's cut to the chase. I am resigning as manager of Roma. But listen, we had a great time and a great season. We won the Serie A and Tammy bagged 48 league goals, which definitely helped. He also scored and assisted in the cup final to help us win the Coppa Italia too, meaning we can cross off 2 trophies from the Glory Hunter Challenge. But where the hell are we gonna go now? Well, as we seen at the end of the last episode, the Chelsea job is free, and out of them and Lyon, I'd much prefer that move, so I applied. Ironically, it was former Chelsea boss Tuchel who took my job at Roma. But it wasn't long before I was invited to an interview, and I sat down with Todd Bowley. The other job that was free in the Serie A is Inter Milan, and that was taken by Zidane. But the Chelsea job was going to be mine, and the next stop in Glory Hunter is with the Blues. It also turns out the best formation here is the same one I've been using in Rome. It's clear to see this side was underperforming, 5th in the league, 22 points behind Champion City, and not doing very well in the Cups. And looking at this side, they have a lot of talent, but definitely some missing pieces. Lukaku is still here, but he only got 18 goals in all competitions last season. One of their signings I love since the start is Ivan Nilsson from Porto, but they had also made daft signings like Wilfried Zaha for 38 million. However, their best addition to the side we know is Moises Caicedo. The Ecuadorian midfielder joined the Blues last season for just 45 million. I will of course be reunited with Badiashile when he returns from his loan spell at Roma. Asensio was the other only change to this side, who came in on a free recently but barely played. And I began my own transfer journey in London, getting rejected by a Turkish goalkeeper who chose Spurs over us for a £10 million move. And that seemed like an ongoing theme, as this goalkeeper rejected us too, going to Leipzig. I couldn't spend too much though, as I only had £64 million, which was enough to meet Valverde's value on the transfer list at Real Madrid, an absolute steal, and I could not believe it. But hilariously, the Chelsea board, would you believe it, said this doesn't represent value for money. The Chelsea board, Todd Bowley, the same man who spent £19 million on Mudryk in January. Now, I was completely baffled why they wouldn't let me do the transfer. The first bit of business I did was sell Ziyech to AC Milan, who had him on loan last season and matched a buyout clause, which I was cool with. But then I negotiated and eventually accepted this mental £141 million deal for Kai Havertz from PSG. Yes, he's a fantastic player, but it allowed us to strengthen more needed areas. Bringing in Mark Gerhard back to Chelsea from Crystal Palace for triple the price they sold him for.
Sorry, what?
Valverde at one point went down as low as £8 million, but for some reason Real Madrid wouldn't listen to any offers from us for a while. So I had to wait a few weeks, and eventually we got the deal done for £48 million, £15 million more than what the board was originally blocking. And the final signing I made was Stefan Ortega as a backup goalkeeper from Man City for a really good price. And that's because we sold Kepa for £13.5 million. So in all this window, as we hit our first match, we spent £114 million, but the transfers out equated to 193. So we actually made nearly £18 million profit from this window, but that was spread across wages. We even tried to help Roma out by trying to loan Mudryk, but he rejected the move. I don't know if you noticed, but this year the Europa League is going to be really hard to win for Glory Hunter, because for instance, in England the top 5 can now qualify for the league phase of the Champions League, which as we know also prevents anyone from dropping into the Europa League as it used to. So that trophy could be the hardest to obtain in this challenge. First game of the season though, and I slightly altered the Roma tactic to suit my new Chelsea side with an almost 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 hybrid, as this is the lineup for our first match. So our first Premier League match against Norwich started very well, with us scoring just after 10 minutes from new signing Valverde, and it wasn't long before Sterling's shot was saved for Mount to double our lead. But Norwich had other ideas and Josh Sargent made it 2-1. So Mason Mount scored another from Sterling's cross, and Ben Chilwell scored a banger from left back just before half time, and Lukaku capped off the 5-1 opening game win with his goal in the 70th minute. Good start. Our next couple of fixtures are Newcastle, followed by Manchester United. One thing I hadn't mentioned yet was Todd Bowley made me make some promises when offering me the job, which included a better dressing room atmosphere to keep our job. I couldn't quite believe it though, what I was seeing when I won my first home match 6-0 against Newcastle with 6 different goal scorers. However, I also couldn't believe my eyes when I witnessed one of the worst goalkeeping performances ever from Edouard Mendy, who in this 3-0 loss at Old Trafford was probably either at fault or in a terrible position for all 3 goals we conceded, and we have no money to replace him. After that disaster, I decided to give Ivan Nielsen a game up front. It was a great decision, and he scored back-to-back hat-tricks in the league. We couldn't really do much on deadline day because of our wage bill ate up most of our transfer budget. And despite us selling most of the players in the league and for the biggest price, the Havertz deal was by far the largest deal of the summer too. Our Champions League fixtures were in, and we face a tough start with Barcelona up this month and PSG in November. And so against the Spanish giants, we took the lead through Fofana at the near post, but it was also a game I decided to start Christian Pulisic from the left hand side, and that turned out to be a great choice too, because he scored 2 goals from blocked chances and we defeat Xavi's Barcelona 3-0 at the Bridge. From there we faced Man City 3 days later, and Erling Haaland set up Phil Foden to give the champions the lead. However, from a free kick this time, Fofana scores again, and we steal another 3 points against great opposition when Ben Chilwell bagged the winner. We still dropped 4 points in September though, with draws against West Ham and Tottenham, but it was Borussia Dortmund up next. We also find ourselves top only by goal difference to Tottenham and Southampton of all teams. But October was a good month, starting with a great win against Dortmund with another 2 goals from Wesley Fofana, who has been incredible from set pieces this season. Although Dortmund did equalise from Oscar Gluck, we put ourselves back in the lead the minute after from Ivan Nielsen, and Lukaku, who made an appearance off the bench, scored a 4th in a 4-1 victory. We picked up 6 wins from 6 matches in October, scoring 8 goals in the Champions League match, but it was a much more difficult November, ending with PSG and then Liverpool. And Tottenham seemed to have dropped more points, while Southampton stayed within 2 points of us so far for now. Unfortunately, November seen us drop early points still to Leicester, but a good Champions League win against Marseille and 2 more league wins against Forest and Wolves before we faced PSG in Paris. And Fofana scored a hat-trick in that Forest game too. But he couldn't score any goals in the Parc des Princes, where PSG unfortunately defeated us 2-0 with the first coming from Mbappe, and guess who scored the second? Of course, it was Kai Havertz. Mason Mount also sprained his ankle ligaments and will be out until Christmas, which meant he missed the Liverpool game, but thankfully his replacement Asensio scored the opener. Liverpool did equalise from the penalty spot, and then they even took the lead right after from a corner. However, we still shown fight back at Anfield, and Ivan Nielsen scored a great goal to level 2-2. Arsenal and Manchester United still keep the pressure on, just 3 points behind us, with champions Man City truly bottling this season down in 8th place. And we played them twice in December, as well as Arsenal coming up very soon. Before that match, we dropped points to Southampton, who still find themselves in the top 5 so far, meaning Arsenal could go top if they beat us. But Ivan Nielsen was not going to let that happen, scoring the only goal of the game at the Emirates. We picked up 2 losses though in December, but neither were against Man City. One was a 3-0 loss to Tottenham, however. As well as knocking them out of the EFL Cup, we also beat Man City in the league at the Bridge, despite going 1-0 down to them thanks to Erling Haaland after just 4 minutes. A shock winner coming from N'Golo Kante of all players though in this 2-1 win. But the loss to Tottenham allowed Manchester United to level the points in the league with just 21 games played, and we actually face them coming up very soon in January. As we went into 2025 though, I was buzzing to see our former Roma star Tammy Abraham with the Ballon d'Or. He fully deserved it. Although Roma are actually struggling without us, down in 7th place in the Serie A. I noticed a certain Robert Lewandowski only had 6 months left in his contract, allowing us to approach, for which I did, and he was willing to talk to us, and eventually he agreed on a contract. But But Barcelona ruined it by activating an extension clause. I'm absolutely gutted. Just before the United fixture, we picked up a surprise loss to Aston Villa after Sterling gave us the lead in the first half. I was also surprised by a transfer, Jude Bellingham joining Manchester City in the January window for £102 million. But a very strong side was available for the top of the table clash against Manchester United. It was big Wes Fofana who found the net first at the back post from a corner. And with 3 minutes left, Reece James cut down the right hand side and his cross was fired home from Kovacic and we take the 3 points. It was actually a big month. 2 Champions League wins with a big one against Napoli at the end, and we got ourselves into the League Cup final after beating Brighton in the semi-final across 2 legs. Shame that doesn't really count for Glory Hunter though. We finished second in the Champions League phase, so we have to wait for our round of 16 opponents to be drawn, while we look ahead to a very tough February. We got our revenge on Tottenham by knocking them out of the FA Cup at the 4th round. Maddison did equalise at the half-hour mark for them, but big Rom Lukaku came off the bench to score the winner. But in the league, we suffered a loss at the hands of Liverpool at home. And then in the next game against Arsenal, Valverde picked up a straight red card after just 15 minutes. And while being completely under the cosh all game, Eddie Nketiah scored and it's 2 defeats in a row. Meaning we are now knocked off the top spot for the very first time since matchday number 5. However, not for long, as Liverpool then went and beat Manchester United while we win our match against Southampton to regain that top spot back. And we put ourselves into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup after demolishing Palace 6-0. But Arsenal ended our FA Cup dreams this season after a big 4-1 defeat at the Emirates. Annoyingly, we did win the League Cup, which again doesn't count for Glory Hunter, and we faced Manchester United in the final. It wasn't just a win either. We absolutely destroyed the side, giving us a tough race for the league title 6-0 at Wembley to lift our first trophy as Chelsea manager. In the Champions League though, which does count for Glory Hunter, we drew Dortmund and Ivan Nielsen scored the first 2 goals of the tie in the first leg in Germany, and Dortmund were in trouble. We made it look easy against Dortmund, beating them 4-0 in the first leg and 5-0 in the second, which makes the loss to Arsenal even weirder right after. But anyway, it's AC Milan next in the quarterfinals in a much calmer April. We've increased our lead ahead of United to 4 points now, giving us a bit of breathing room. April began with a fantastic win against our rivals Fulham, with our Brazilian striker scoring a wonderful hat-trick of goals. He really has come into his own this season, keeping Lukaku mostly in a rotation role when he is needed a rest. And yet, despite us winning all 3 games against Wolves and Leicester as well, it stays 4 points between us and Manchester United in the race for the title. Another European night at Stamford Bridge to remember for the Chelsea fans as we take on AC Milan and give ourselves a fantastic opportunity to reach the semi-final with a big 5-1 first leg win. The heroes of the fixture too was of course Ivan Nielsen, who picked up 2 goals, and then surprisingly Wesley Fofana, who got himself another hat-trick from centre-back. We lost in the second leg 2-0, but of course we still progressed through on aggregate to face Bundesliga contenders RB Leipzig. Straight into that semi-final first leg in Germany then, and what a goal from Marco Asensio that is. And right on the stroke of half-time, an incredible cross from Cucurella finds Ivan Nielsen and we are 2-0 up. But hold on to your hats because it's gonna get even better as the ball finds its way to the back post where Asensio makes it 3-0 in the first leg. A huge opportunity to put ourselves into the Champions League final potentially against Liverpool, who just beat Man United 4-1. But let's focus quickly back on the Premier League though, because we play Newcastle next and Isak has just chipped our goalkeeper from 25 yards. However, you need luck to win the Premier League, I always believe, and that's exactly what we got today. Because talk about being in the right place at the right time for Ivan Nielsen, who was pretty much struck both times with the ball to score 2 goals and earn Chelsea 3 very crucial points. Shockingly, the league title is just a win away as Man United lose 1-0 to 19th place Sheffield United, who are already relegated, putting us 7 points clear with 3 games to go. Before that, we need to secure our place in the Champions League final though, and we make it 4-0 on aggregate against Leipzig. Give them their due though, they did give us a good game on the night. They pulled one back from the spot and getting a second. But we are going to the Champions League final, where we will face Liverpool. We just need a win against West Ham though, and Mark Guehi scores after just 1 minute. He also doubles our lead in the 70th minute from another set piece, and in just one season as Chelsea manager, we are crowned the Premier League champions as Andre Santos scores a third. Confirmation before Manchester United can even play their match. Chelsea are champions of England. Another trophy to add to our Glory Hunter cabinet. And with the Premier League trophy crossed off, is it going to be the Champions League next? Well, I guess you'll have to tune in to find out in the next episode, so make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss it, and I'll slap it up on the screen if it's out. Well, we've made it to the Champions League final. It's season number 3 at our second club, and we've just secured the Premier League in Glory Hunter, meaning we have added our third trophy to the Glory Hunter cabinet. But after that success, it's time for the big one, the Champions League final against Liverpool. Our lineup is a strong one as well, with Caicedo and Kante running the midfield in favour of Enzo Fernandez. Lining up in our usual formation, Liverpool are setting up in their usual 4-3-3 with Milinkovic-Savic at the heart of their transition from defence to attack, and a front three of Diaz, Salah and Vitinha through the middle. We've beat them before, we are the best in the country, but that means nothing for the next 90 minutes. However, it only took 11 minutes before we took the lead from a far post header off the corner. It's still only the first half, but our relentless pressing wins the ball back and Mason Mount makes it 2-0, and we are en route to lifting the trophy. However, Liverpool have a fantastic team, and their response was intended to tell us that they are still fighting for this. And into the second half, we held on so well until the 89th minute, and Jota, unmarked at the back post, equals the scoring, and it's into extra time. And today is not our day. We have many seasons ahead of us to win this competition, but this season won't be it, as Vitinha scores the winner in extra time. And Liverpool are European champions once again, coming back from 2-0 down in Munich with us looking so comfortable as well. As heartbreaking as that defeat is, we need to bounce back next season. Liverpool lift it this year, but we have the team to win this competition for sure. Or we could apply for the Man City job with Bellingham and Haaland. I'm just kidding, I let Mourinho take that job instead. During the pre-season, I sold Koulibaly to Barcelona and only raised £9.75 million for now. However, on the transfer list was Leon Goretzka, and I seen him as the perfect addition to our squad, so I made the offer. And despite some competition for his signature, we got the job done and landed the £54 million world-class midfielder. We also sold Callum Hudson-Odoi for £60 million to Arsenal. Our first game of the season, by the way, is Liverpool, typically in the Community Shield, a competition they've won the last 3 seasons. It was a quiet start, but eventually the ball was spread out to Valverde down the right-hand side, whose cross was met by Danielson, and we take the lead. We had the chance to go 2-0 up from the penalty spot, but Mason Mount only hit the post. Luckily, we still picked up the win. Our first league game of the season, though, we start Goretzka next to Kante against Norwich. The result was great. We won 3-0, and it was comfortable with 2 goals from Evanilson. However, I don't know what was on the grass at Carroll Road today, but Mason Mount went down injured with no one around him, followed by in the second half, Evanilson did exactly the same thing. And it ain't good, lads. Mason Mount tore his calf and will miss 3 to 4 months. Evanilson has twisted his ankle and won't be out as long, but it's still a big loss. What did make me feel better was Liverpool got stuffed 4-0 against Tottenham, the European champions, demolished in their next competitive game. We didn't feel the loss of Mount and Evanilson in the next game against Villa, comfortable win. But a 0-0 draw against West Ham is not great. 18 shots with just 1 on target, definitely missing Evanilson. What makes it worse is the run we've got coming up without those 2 guys is brutal too, with Arsenal next, Brighton and Man City to follow, and Liverpool and Tottenham in October, not to mention our Champions League games. Against Arsenal is an unexpected hero that took the game by the scruff of the neck and dominated from CDM, Moises Caicedo. He scored in the first minute, and that was the tempo he set out all game, scoring all 3 goals in this 3-0 win. What a performance from the lad. and we sit back at the top of the league once again. We end the transfer window still only buying Goretzka, but we also sold Dacho Fofana and Wilfried Zaha, meaning we only actually spent £54 million but brought in 95 million, so there's some money left in the kitty. More good news, Evanilson returned from injury for the Brighton game mid-September, and he scored from the spot in a nice and easy 2-0 win, where we had 31 shots in total. But can someone please explain to me why we are facing Liverpool in our first Champions League match of the season? Because I thought you couldn't play a team from the same nation, but the team that beat us in the final also gave us a loss in the first league phase match at Stamford Bridge. I double checked, this definitely isn't the Champions League, it's the Premier League, and we are at the Etihad giving Man City a big fat loss. The rest of the month was also full of wins, including a 3-0 against Southampton and our first Champions League win of the season against Atletico Madrid. But check this out. I know it's only after 6 matches, but City are currently in 19th place under Mourinho, with players like Erling Haaland, Joshua Kimmich, Jude Bellingham and even Victor Osimhen. Right before the league match against Liverpool, we had one big battle with bottom of the league Brentford, despite Lukaku giving us the lead. Lukaku then had his penalty saved fantastically, by the way, by David Raya. But then Brentford equalised late, and in the 94th minute, when it looked like Brentford held on to a point, Enzo Fernandez had other ideas. But we show nothing like that fight in the Liverpool game, losing 3-0. It was nice to see Schalke back in the Champions League after their recent problems, but it was even nicer to see us pick up the win there, with the second goal particularly being pleasing to the eye. You corner haters aren't going to like this one either. Wesley Fofana getting a hat-trick, all from corners, with 2 aiming at the far post. Nothing special happening, just aiming at my best aerial threat. Not my fault, the game allows too many corner goals, which was the 3 points we ended to separate us from Liverpool in second place. In the Champions League, which of course for Glory Hunter is more important than the league right now, as well as the FA Cup, we took a comfortable 2-0 win against Zagreb, before once again playing an English side. This time it was Arsenal who we faced, and Asensio stole the show at the Emirates. After scoring our first goal, Morita then equalised just 2 minutes after Asensio's opener, but the Spaniard played a beautiful through ball to N'Golo Kante for the winner. A quick focus back to the Premier League again, as a 4-0 win against Leeds took us to a game at Old Trafford where Lukaku scored against his former club in the first minute. The Argentine Enzo Fernandez then made it 2 just after 13 minutes, and 3 minutes after that, Lukaku put us 3-0 up within 20 minutes of the match. We went back to back with 4-0 wins when Badiashile found another before half-time. 6 wins from 6 in November, but our biggest test of the season came next when we headed to the Camp Nou to face Xavi's Barcelona, who currently sit top of La Liga. Liverpool, however, had an awful month, only winning 2 games. And we now pull away from them with an 8-point lead only after 14 games. However, we threw that lead away during December because our form was awful, losing to both Newcastle and Wolves. But joined to both Palace and Newcastle, playing them once again, dropping a total of 10 points in those 4 games. I was hoping the form in the Champions League would be better, and I was optimistic when Fernandez opened the scoring, but it wasn't quite that way, and Barcelona came back early in the second half from Kingsley Coman. And the curse struck again because a player we sold in the summer scored their second in Dacho Fofana. I thought I'd take a point, and we were on track for that when Koundé smashed it into his own net, but Franck Kessié had different plans and we lose another. And it's been a bad month going into January. It also means that we need to get 2 wins ideally to qualify in the top 8 of the Champions League and avoid that playoff. We did have a bit of money though to strengthen our attacking force, as I mentioned earlier, and I made a bid for Andre Sheldrup, who had a £38 million release clause at Benfica. And after a slight bit of pressure from other clubs, we got our man. Evanilson hasn't scored since the middle of November, but he is back amongst the goals with 2 against Southampton in this 2-1 win. In the Cup, so Liverpool knocked us out of the semi-final of the League Cup, but for Glory Hunter, FA Cup is what we are focused on, and we beat Luton 4-0. More bad results in the league after we put ourselves in front against Tottenham. They broke down the right hand side and found an equaliser when Harry Kane pops up in the box. And that was followed by a 4-1 loss at Stamford Bridge to Liverpool once again. We needed wins in the Champions League though, which is way more important, and that's what we got when we hosted Hungarian side Ferencváros. Although the set-piece police will be all over this in the comments, it was a comfortable 3-0 win. The trickier tie, the final 2 league phase matches, came against Atalanta, who remember we do have beef with after they beat us to the Serie A in that first year in Rome. But we took a 2-goal lead from Mudrik's finish, and they could only pull one back by Danny Motta. And those 2 wins shot us up to 3rd place in the league phase, and we avoid those playoffs. Liverpool, however, have not took advantage of our bad form in the league, and they dropped down to 4th place of us being trailed by Manchester United and West Ham now. Man United, who spent £153 million in January, and West Ham, who brought in 7 players. Bad news though, because this mistake by Chalobah means we might have to stay another season at Chelsea. And that's because it was the only goal in the FA Cup 4th round tie against Manchester City. February also included 3 league wins, so let's breeze into the important competition of the Champions League, because we have Dortmund in the round of 16, and the gap in the league now is 7 points. The first leg in Dortmund, Mason Mount scored from the spot to put us ahead, but Dortmund ripped us open down the right hand side, and this one ended 1-1 when HDMI cheekily chipped it in. So in the second leg in London, we really needed to step up, and we did just that. Although the second goal was an own goal, the rest were very good, and Sheldrup even got his first Champions League goal for us and played very well overall. The goal of the night though came from the foot of Goretzka, who walloped that one in, but overall fantastic performance in the 6-0 win, and we go into the quarter-finals. The gap in the league stays to 7 points if United win their game in hand, and we have Benfica in the Champions League quarters. We also had United coming up in April after Benfica, and that could very well throw the league away with some tough fixtures. But in the first leg of the Champions League against Benfica, it was headlined with 2 goalkeeping clangers, with both Benfica's and our Mendy being caught in no man's land at 1-1. Thankfully, Evanilson scored a 93rd minute winner in Portugal, giving us the advantage going into the second leg. After scoring both goals for us in the first leg, it was Evanilson's show again, as the former Porto man must have enjoyed this night, scoring a hat-trick in the second leg at the Bridge, giving us a strong force of momentum going into the semi-final against Manchester United. We played them in the league in between Benfica and the semi-final, and we smashed them 4-0 again, putting us in the driving seat for that league title, needing just 5 points from 4 games. The first leg of the Champions League at Old Trafford, and Fofana gives us the lead. And just 5 minutes later, the United fans would have been sick of the sight of us already, as Evanilson made it 2-0. But on the break, Heung-min Son got one back soon after, and Rashford then equalised from the penalty spot. However, an outrageous angle from Raheem Sterling put us back ahead to London with this strike. And for the 3rd game in a row, it's Manchester United who we face next. I just don't know what's happened though in the second leg, because Marcus Rashford scored very early on and we had nothing all the way from extra time to penalties, but we thought we might have got away with it when Casemiro missed United's second penalty. But eventually Kovacic stepped up and he missed 2, and it went down to the 5th and final penalties, and Oliveira scored for United, but Wesley Fofana stepped up for Chelsea and missed. And heartbreak as Manchester United go on to face Leipzig in the Champions League final. Although we've already won the Premier League last season, it still will be good for our resume for future jobs in Glory Hunter to do it once again, and those 4 points put us just fingertips away. And it was Mourinho's Manchester City who we needed that one last point to lift the title at home against, but they were trying to spoil the party. Erling Haaland put us 2 goals down on the half-hour mark, and we couldn't break the deadlock up until the 85th minute when Asensio eventually got the ball down the right-hand side and smashed home, giving us hope. And then, in the 90th minute, an incredible through ball found Asensio's run and he slots it home, winning our 2nd Premier League title in 2 years. It was a lot less impressive than what it should have been. It's a league title nonetheless. Manchester United went on to win the Champions League this season, but once again, when we take a gander at the job centre, it's those 2 teams again searching for a hero. Roma, our former club, and Manchester City. Could this guy win us the Champions League with Bellingham supplying the assist, I wonder? Despite winning the league this season for a 2nd time, it was still a season of disappointment for Glory Hunter, because we didn't add no new trophies to the cabinet, which is our ultimate priority. So the Premier League win is great, but the loss on penalties in the semi-final of the Champions League and Man City knocking us out early in the FA Cup definitely hurts more. And I can't help but thinking the City job opening up could be an interesting move. I know Chelsea has great players, but City have generational talents like Bellingham, De Bruyne, and Erling Haaland. So I took all of your advice and I bit the bullet and I applied for the job, and I sat and waited. And after about 10 days of waiting, they approached me for an interview. They even started to dig out their former manager Mourinho, and they mentioned their massive £215 million budget. And the press seemed to think I'm the favourites for the job. And they were right. Manchester City offered me the job and I accepted. How many of you expected that so soon? But things is going to be tougher because the Premier League champions I just left hired Pep Guardiola. In the other leagues, the only real shock was how close PSG came to losing the title to Monaco. A signing I was planning to make at Chelsea I made here instead, and I brought in Dusan Vlahovic from Juventus for £55 million after he requested a transfer coming off the back of a 23-goal season. Julian Alvarez was concerned by this and mentioned that he wanted to leave, so I sold him the other way for £42 million. I felt like the full-back positions were the only real weakness for City, and that's why I went for Luca Netz for the left-back role at Gladbach. The young German has developed incredibly well, and we struck a deal for around £66 million after clauses. And we got the deal done. I'm very happy with that purchase. Joshua Kimmich is already at the club, but I couldn't help but also bringing in Fred Sneijder, who moved to Atalanta for £47 million, as he also allows Kimmich to go CDM if needs be. So going into our first game in Manchester, we spent a total of £158 million while selling £79 million, so there is still some of the budget left. And in our first game against Blackburn, I am trying to put a 3 up top formation right with high wing backs to try and create as many chances as possible. I'd say it worked out, and the Omega Luke Erling Haaland combination started beautifully with Haaland scoring a total of 4 goals against Blackburn in a game where, check this, we had 43 shots and 18 on target. Despite conceding 5 goals, the Blackburn goalkeeper had a 7.1 average rating after this game for all of the goals he actually prevented. Then we went straight into a game against Liverpool, and their star striker Nunez opened the scoring. Laporte pulled one back on the stroke of half-time, tapping in a rebound, and Vlahovic scored his first goal for us in the 74th minute. But we gave Van Dijk too long on the ball, and he picked out Nunez, who made it 2-2. And despite dropping those points, we still had a great start to the season, winning the next 3. Coming up though was PSG, followed by the Manchester derby against the European champions, and the Chelsea game with both managers against their former clubs, lurking at the start of October. And we closed the transfer window with no other transfer activities. Our next opponents, Burnley, had the one and only Paul Pogba, which I didn't expect. He also got himself a straight red card in the 3-0 win we got over them. We take to the Champions League against PSG, and what a performance for the citizens, because we did not just only stop scoring goals. Starting with Osman's goal in the 3rd minute, Mbappe did make it 2-1, but very soon after, Erling Haaland got his first of 2 goals, and we were back in control to eventually put us 6-1 up before Mbappe scored his second, and even then, we went on and scored our 7th. And it's on to the Manchester derby, where we were humbled by a very good Manchester United team who put themselves 2-0 up before Bernardo Silva pulled one back for us. But United were the better side on the day, and Patrick Schick scored their 3rd, and we lose for the first time. We bounced back well, picking up 3 wins, but the Chelsea match loomed ever closer. We do go into that match off the back of another loss though to Tottenham. With Vlahovic, Foden, Fred Sneijder and Laporte out for this Chelsea match, we definitely weren't considered favourites. And Pep Guardiola decided not to bring any new players into this Chelsea side. The scoreline compared to the statistics were very different, but Kevin De Bruyne was good when you looked at either. And although the score stayed 1-0, Cucurella did get himself a straight red card when he snapped the goal scorer from behind. But this statistic suggests we dominated, having 23 shots and 13 on target. Back in Europe, and Juventus caused us some trouble scoring early on, and again, despite us creating 20 shots, we only managed to score 1 ourselves. So an up and down October, we sit in 3rd place, but with a game in hand, which could take us to the top on goal difference, and I can already see this being a very close title race. And Erling Haaland and his 5 goals against Norwich put us top of the league. And then we dropped off top spot right after when we drew to Brentford. We travelled to France to face Marseille in the Champions League, and after we took the lead, we struggled. Amin Harit smashed in a beautiful free kick. Haaland then put us back in front, but we couldn't stop the onslaught, and Marseille equalised and went on and scored a winner in the 88th minute. So I decided to change the tactic after those 2 bad results for the upcoming game against Watford, and I do think we need more depth in the midfield as well when we get to January. Did it work? Well, we won 5-0. We had 36 shots, 19 on target, and Watford just had 1 shot. But let's not jump to any conclusions. We did, however, go straight into a Champions League match with the finalists Leipzig, and we defeated them quite easily 2-0 in Germany with another 2 goals from Erling Haaland. And then we got a 2-0 win against Leicester straight after. From Germany to Spain, another win in the Champions League against Villarreal. A clash of the 2 best strikers in the league next, as Evan Ferguson has been carrying Wolves into a top 6 spot so far this season, but Erling Haaland is a different beast. And in this game at the Etihad, he scored 4 goals. Now Evan Ferguson did score Wolves' only goal, but this was the big Norwegian's day again, I guess. And 2 more league wins lead into a match against Arsenal, who sit in second place. And that's not the result we wanted at all. Or this one against Newcastle. And now Arsenal lead the Premier League by a point and have 2 games in hand, with our next 2 games being the Manchester derby and my return to Stamford Bridge. And it was a Manchester derby for the neutrals, as it was a fantastic back and forth, with De Bruyne scoring the opener to Rashford equalising in the 20th minute. Erling Haaland pushed forward with the ball and got a second, but Anthony's strike gave us a Desmond Tutu going into half time. And second half was very quiet until the 95th minute, when once again Anthony's worldie flew into our net. Gutted. Arsenal are now 4 points clear with 2 games in hand, but Erling Haaland has 32 goals in just 21 games. My return to Stamford Bridge was a lot more positive though, as Ruben Diaz picked up the first goal of the game and Victor Osimhen got a second. Badiashile did pull one back, but it was a nice 3 points to win. No rest for the wicked. We played Liverpool next and managed to pull off another win and 3 points. The FA Cup is very important to us this season and probably my #1 target, and the 3rd round win against Southampton was a good one. Another bad result in the league against Spurs follows, but 2 huge Champions League wins help us qualify in the top 8 against Valencia and Salzburg. And despite the Spurs result, it was a great month on the pitch. But what about off of it? Well, I mentioned needing depth in the midfield and declaring interest. Caicedo requested a transfer and his asking price is just 66 million. So not only did we wrap up that deal on deadline day, but we also got a second centre midfielder in James Ward-Prowse. Some other bad news is Joshua Kimmich broke his ankle, hence the reason for needing 2 new players. We took a trip to Ewood Park for the 4th round of the FA Cup, and it was a good day once again for Manchester City, and a great day for Erling Haaland, who scored yet another hat-trick. And it's almost becoming not really impressive now when he scores 3, which is rather scary really, but we progressed to the 5th round with a 4-1 win. And in that 5th round, we defeated Cardiff, and again, Haaland scored 3 goals. The only result that wasn't great in February was a 5-4 loss at home to Everton. That included a big win against Arsenal. But we have Porto up next in the Champions League, the League Cup final, and the quarters of the FA Cup to come. So let's shift our focus to the Champions League for now, because we should really beat Porto fairly comfortably in the round of 16. And I would say that's what's going to be the case after this first leg performance. We put ourselves 3 goals up before Porto themselves got a consolation. The second leg was even easier, 4-1 win, and we go into the quarterfinals. Not that it's important to Glory Hunter, but we face United once again in the League Cup final, and it was another loss to Manchester United in the derby, this time 3-2 at Wembley, so the bragging rights go to them this year for sure. Leeds next in the FA Cup quarterfinals, and PSG in the Champions League. Don't go anywhere. To the Etihad then to face Leeds in the FA Cup, and Dusan Vlahovic, who hasn't scored as many as I expected this season, got himself the first. Of course, Erling Haaland got a couple of goals, and we breezed into the semi-final, dispatching Leeds 5-0. Of course, we play again against our bogey team this year, Manchester United, who sit in the league in 8th place, while we somehow close the gap on Arsenal in the Premier League to just 2 points. Into the business end of the Champions League, and Erling Haaland puts us 1-0 up, but Mbappe is set free over the top, and he is uncatchable and makes it 1 apiece. To the biggest blunder of the season from Donnarumma gifting a second for Vlahovic, it then caught me off guard seeing Evan Ferguson, who had signed, but he was involved and set up Mbappe to score a second. With the second leg being the game before the semi-final against Manchester United. But the second leg included 1 goal in Paris in the 92nd minute, and it was Kevin De Bruyne who scored that winner. After battering us all season, you better believe that I was up for this semi-final in the FA Cup against Manchester United, and we started strong. And we continued down all the way through, with Vlahovic scoring a second and Erling Haaland getting a third, smashing us into the FA Cup final, where we will face either Norwich or Tottenham. While our semi-final in the Champions League puts us against AC Milan, with a chance to play Manchester United again if we both make it through. However, that didn't look too promising when we took an L in Milan when Rafael Leao's cross found Calabria and we lose the first leg 1-0. We finally found ourselves in the tie in the second leg when Moises Caicedo leveled the aggregate scoring. Rafael Leao put AC Milan back in front and then an unlikely hero stepped up. Someone we haven't mentioned much, Phil Foden. He scored 3 goals and despite a little comeback from AC Milan, we hold on, winning the tie 4-3 on aggregate, and we have another Champions League final. This result here against Villa is an interesting one and a hugely impactful one as well, because that was the difference in us finishing in first place in the league and Arsenal winning the Premier League, with Chelsea, by the way, down in 7th place from winning it with us last season. Oh, and Erling Haaland, he has 46 goals. That is mental. Pep Guardiola was actually sacked at Chelsea as well. How embarrassing. It's time to stop laughing though and focus, because it's FA Cup final time. It was 0-0 until the second half, but what an opening goal from Victor Osimhen from an extremely tight angle. And of course, Erling Haaland, who missed a lot of games recently, picked up a second goal, and Manchester City are your FA Cup winners. I left Chelsea for this exact reason, and we did it. Another trophy to add to the Glory Hunter cabinet, with the Champions League final to play next, which of course is yet another Manchester derby, and we really need revenge for this one. We were fortunate to have our full squad available, which made it tougher to pick than I thought. Erik ten Hag lined up United with a classic 4-2-3-1 with Heung-min Son up top and Rashford from the left. They've made some strange signings in recent years, like the cat kicker Kurt Zuma, but it's brought them success. The graphic for our lineup didn't know where to put Phil Foden, which did crack me up, but it's time for our second crack at the Champions League trophy. Probably the easier one to get out of the 2 European competitions, but each time so far it's been an English bogey team in our way. Cross those fingers for me. It took just 8 minutes for the first highlight, and with us in control of the ball, I got rather excited until we just give the ball away, and United countered with one long ball from Anthony to Rashford from his own half, who didn't miss. Great. It's only the 16th minute and Manchester United are at us again down the left, and the ball is sliced through our defence to Anthony, whose shot still finds the bottom corner despite Ederson getting fingers to it. 2-0 United. And I straight up told the defence at half-time that that was purely unacceptable. Our best chances seem to be coming down our left-hand side, but we just can't get a good shot away. United started to sit back and let us play though, and we got closer to scoring when Osimhen's strike smashed off the crossbar. Again, it was Lucas Netz down the left-hand side who was making things happen, and his cross dropped eventually to Erling Haaland, who could only find the side netting. It was time to make some changes. I pulled Fraser off for Rodri, and I swapped Kimmich to right back, De Bruyne on for Caicedo, and Vlahovic on for Osimhen, and I allowed Haaland to stay central. Bellingham got injured right after though, and I had to think between Silva, Ward-Prowse or Grealish, and I went with the set-piece maestro, James Ward-Prowse. United had another spell and seemed to be able to play right through us with Bruno Fernandes, who smashed the crossbar and somehow we're still in this game. And it was a Fernandes free kick saved by Ederson, but the rebound could have also been an easy tap-in. Vlahovic gets it clear and Erling Haaland is barreling down the wing, but brought down by Bruno Fernandes, who has already been booked. And you know what that means, Bruno Fernandes is sent off, and that could be a game changer. I brought on Bernardo Silva in a false 9 position. I pushed a couple of players up, and it's time to go for it. Straight away, it played into an effect, and down the right-hand side, the ball was played back to Araujo, who brought the ball forward with a great cross, and Vlahovic hits the bar again. We keep the pressure on though. Ward-Prowse picks up the ball, finds Erling Haaland eventually through Rodrigo, who plays in De Bruyne, and goal! It's 2-1. Grab the ball, there's still 5 minutes left. But it's the 94th of 94 minutes, and we have one more chance. Luka Netz down the left. He's found Erling Haaland. He tries to chip the goalkeeper, and it doesn't work with the last kick of the game. And the most prolific striker in the world misses a chance to level things up, and there you have it. Manchester United win in the Champions League final for the 2nd season in a row, and we have lost 2 Champions League finals in 3 seasons. Absolutely heartbreaking. But what do we do next? Because technically England is complete, but this is probably the best place to get Champions League done. Because the only other options right now are Villarreal, Nice, or back to Chelsea. Or we could resign as being the Manchester City boss, hoping that a high-profile manager leaves their role, starting a manager merry-go-round where in Spain or Germany, and we can apply for that role. Last season, we took the job at Manchester City while at Chelsea, and we secured the FA Cup complete in England in Glory Hunter. But a second loss in the Champions League final, this time against our derby rivals Manchester United, that stings big time. None of the jobs available really interested me either, and the Inter Milan manager took the vacant Chelsea job, which allowed Chelsea's former manager who's just been sacked, Pep Guardiola, to take the Inter job. So I decided to start the season at Manchester City. But whether we make it to the end of the season or not, I've decided this will be my last in England, and I will mainly focus just on the Champions League matches and any job prospects this season, seeing as we've secured the Premier League already on multiple occasions. Transfer wise, I didn't really feel like we needed much, but Gvardiol had a rather good release clause at Leipzig, and we got that done deal really quick and signed the Croatian defender. I was tempted to raise funds to bring in Valverde at Chelsea, who requested a transfer too, but I didn't, and I decided to create a new tactic from this to this. And after last season's losses, I needed to add a little bit more defensive stability, and with the three at the back, bringing in Gvardiol, I think that will help that, and we can rotate the three strikers that we've got. I think it'll be a good change. Although leading up to the Champions League games, I didn't know whether it was going to be good or not, with big wins but 2 losses to Man United and Arsenal. But in our first Champions League fixture, we faced off against Barcelona at the Etihad, and an attack down the left created the first goal from Osimhen. It stayed 1-0 till fairly late in the second half, when eventually we secured the win when Caicedo picked up a second. Next it was Pep's Inter Milan, and despite Haaland picking up a knock, he still managed to score the only 2 goals of the game. However, we had used all our subs, and at this point, after a counter-attack to pick up the third, he pulled up with a bad injury and had to come off. Luckily, it was only an injury for the next 2 weeks, and he shouldn't miss too many important matches. West Ham were the early frontrunners in the Premier League though, and they were led by Thomas Tuchel surprisingly. It seemed like we also already played our 2 difficult fixtures in the Champions League phase, with some easier fixtures to follow. I mean, we won 8-0 away to Molde, and Haaland scored 5 goals against his boyhood club. And October not only included that 8-0, but a 9-0 win against Leeds and a 7-0 against Bournemouth. We took a trip to France next to face Lyon, and it was Phil Foden who opened the scoring on the half-hour mark. However, Ederson produced another goalkeeping howler early into the second half, and Lyon levelled. But the player of the match today was none other than the Serbian giant Dusan Vlahovic, who scored the second goal and was set up wonderfully by Haaland for the third and final of the game. It wasn't all plain sailing in the league phase though, because the match after against Leipzig did not go to plan, despite Haaland giving us the early advantage. It was Nicholas Jackson who levelled things up for the German side, but it was former Arsenal man Emile Smith-Rowe who bagged the winner after 53 minutes. In the Premier League, we currently trail Chelsea by 3 points. In the league phase of the Champions League is only Leipzig, who just beat us, that is ahead, with 5 wins from 5. We got the 3 points in the only European game in December when we went to San Sebastian to face Sociedad, when Bernardo Silva scored the only goal. I know I didn't want to focus too much on the Premier League, but after these 3 losses in December, we beat Liverpool 9-0 out of nowhere. Very strange month for sure. For the 3rd season in a row, Erling Haaland has won the Ballon d'Or, which is no surprise really, considering he scored 84 goals in 59 games. He got a couple more in the next Champions League fixture in a comfortable 6-0 win against Nordsjælland, as well as picking up a hat-trick in the final league phase match against Marseille, who kind of crumbled to us after making it 2-1 in the fixture, and eventually it was another comfortable 5-1 win for us, and surely automatic qualification to the round of 16. We actually topped the Champions League phase with a better goal difference than PSG and Leipzig, 3rd in the Premier League so far though, and a cup final in the EFL Cup against West Ham too. Which, in case you were wondering, we won 3-0, and I'm sure the set piece police will be all over this in the comments section at the first 2 goals. And we turned things around in February too in the league, taking top spot on goal difference, which quite frankly is ludicrous at plus 74 after just 29 games, and it's Bayern Munich in the round of 16 up next. And they absolutely battered us in Munich, with Benjamin Sesko scoring a very good hat-trick, with his 3rd coming just after half-time. The guy is an animal. We did pick up a consolation goal too when Bellingham's strike from range went in, but we head into the second leg 3-1 down. But it was game on in the second leg when Victor Osimhen opened the scoring from Haaland's cross just 9 minutes in, and the big Norwegian levelled the aggregate score on the 36th minute, and we dominated the game. He also had a chance to put us ahead from the spot, but missed it, and it goes to extra time. And on an attack by Bayern Munich, we snatched the ball and countered, playing it to Vlahovic, whose cutback found Foden, and it's 4-3. And with Bayern pushing for a second half equaliser, we end our hopes of Champions League glory this season when Vlahovic puts it across for Osimhen again. Relief. The draw was rather unkind to us, however, and we next faced PSG. The first leg was held in Paris too, and from Ferguson's nod down to Havertz's through ball, Mbappe scored and the worries kicked in. That was until we replied just 2 minutes later through Erling Haaland. But we lost the ball on the halfway line and suddenly Mbappe was in and scored a second. And Mbappe then slipped through Ruben Neves, whose run from midfield ended with a PSG third goal. And after Mbappe got himself 2 goals, he got 2 assists and he slotted through Evan Ferguson, and it's 4-1 in the first leg. We have turned the Etihad into a fortress this season, and we needed to do that again, and it took until the second half before we finally put the pressure on. Erling Haaland made the aggregate score 4-2, but Foden put us just a goal behind. And after just announcing his plans to retire at the end of the season, Kevin De Bruyne levels the score, and again it's extra time, which we powered through with momentum, and Dusan Vlahovic snatched the lead, and Phil Foden, just like the last round, puckered up a crushing final goal, and somehow we go into the semi-finals. And we get the difficult tie once again, facing Real Madrid. We really are our own worst enemy though, because we constantly go behind in the knockout stages, and today is no different. After Camavinga's goal, we failed to clear the ball away, and Matt O'Reilly's shot deflects in and makes it 2-0 at the Bernabeu. But as you can see, straight from the kickoff, we go route 1 in the 87th minute, and Bernardo Silva gives us momentum going into the second leg. I know we've been good at the Etihad, but this is something else. We are a different beast. I know the first 2 goals were a little scrappy as well, but once we were ahead, we were still lethal, and we continued to put the boots in on Real Madrid, who were not having a good day at all. And by half-time, we are 5-0 up with the game all over, but the final score comes in at 7-0, and it's another Champions League final for us. And this time it's the Italian side Milan we face. There have been no jobs that have really cropped up that I fancied, and we've got the lead tied up with a game to go, so we're actually on for a treble. The player stats for the league is hilarious too, as we dominated that. Our lineup for the Champions League though, which by the way is being played at Old Trafford hilariously, includes a strong side with a retiring Kevin De Bruyne on the bench. So what were we facing in the final? A classic 4-2-3-1 from AC Milan with their danger man Rafael Leao out on the wing. Di Catalari has developed incredibly well, but McAllister up front is interesting. But this is the Milan side that has just won the Serie A, so we shouldn't underestimate them, but we need our second leg performances and definitely not our first leg ones. At 70 minutes though, it was still 0-0 and I had to make some changes, so Kevin De Bruyne has got his kit off and he's coming on for his last ever game of football. I thought there would be time for one last chance on the 90th minute as we creep into the second minute of injury time, but still at 0-0, once again we go to extra time. And we create a huge chance down the right hand side. Vlahovic plays the ball to Haaland, who has to score there. How has he missed? Second half of extra time and it's all Manchester City, but all of a sudden the ball is played long and we struggle to deal with it, and McAllister is through and Ederson saves the defence from an awful mistake there, and it's still 0-0. Free kick could be our last chance, but no, it's only into the side netting. From that goal kick though, Milan get the ball forward and the ball falls to Kovacic, who finds Skov Olsen. Unfortunately, there's a bad miss and this one's going to penalties. Of course, it's Erling Haaland who steps up first, and no mistake, we take the lead in the shootout. McAllister steps up for Milan though and also finds the net. It's 1-1. Kevin De Bruyne on his final game of football, his final touch doesn't miss, but Rafael Leao is the man at Milan and he also smashed it in for 2-2. Vlahovic is next to fire home for us, and Elmas makes no mistake for Milan 3-3. Who's going to miss first? But James Ward-Prowse came on in extra time and he loves a penalty and he finds the bottom corner. And Kovacic steps up and puts it just out of reach for Ederson. It's 4-4. Ronald Araujo is surprisingly the fifth taker, but it's a very composed defender and he scores in the bottom corner. Ravella from midfield had a good game and his penalty is smashed down the middle. Sudden death time. New signing Vardio joined us in the summer, big left foot and he scores, and it's all on Skov Olsen who steps up and it's saved by Ederson. And finally we have won the Champions League at the third time of asking. Relief as we finally get this done for Glory Hunter. There were no obvious jobs to go for during the season, so I stayed put and it was ultimately the right decision as we lift the Champions League trophy. But make no mistake, we will be resigning after this win and I will be hunting for our next job. And my prediction might be correct, even though this was our third final. I think the Europa League will be much more difficult to win. Manchester City made that 3 Champions Leagues in a row from a Manchester side and 6 in a row from an English team. But let's get that Champions League trophy added to our Glory Hunter cabinet. And it's time to leave our post at Manchester City and begin the job hunt. Quite interesting to see what our manager profile is known for, leading teams to title wins. The first job that cropped up though throughout the summer was Emery leaving the Sociedad job to become the Spain manager. We also got offered a lot of those roles as well, including the England job. But for some reason, on the day that Emery left, I could only declare interest and I couldn't apply for the role at Sociedad. And Luis Enrique took the vacancy from the Porto job. They have a great team and just finished in 4th place. So I guess we'll have to go into the season without a job, and I guess we just have to wait for the right one to crop up. And it wasn't until November when they started to appear with the likes of Sevilla, Celta Vigo and Bayer Leverkusen who caught my eye. Celta sit in 17th place and Sevilla in 14th currently in La Liga. However, Leverkusen is a weird one. They are dead last in the Bundesliga but have an amazing team. Rieder is in centre mid and is superb. They have Hloschek and Rijkoff up top and Florian Wirtz and Almeida in midfield, who is also injured. Whereas the Sevilla team is not great at all. They have Scott McTominay for Christ's sake. The same as Celta Vigo, not McTominay, but their team is really bad. So what would you do? Would you apply for Leverkusen? They don't have any European football and a great team to build around. Or do we wait a little longer for another manager at a bigger club, possibly in Europa League football, to leave? We did it! We finally won the Champions League on our third final, crossing off another trophy for our Glory Hunter cabinet. But we ended the season resigning from Manchester City, and we headed into season number 7 of Glory Hunter without a job. But it wasn't until November when some interesting opportunities came about. And although Bayer Leverkusen were bottom of the Bundesliga, I felt like they easily had the best team out of the jobs available with the likes of Florian Wirtz and Fabian Rieder. So I applied for the job and hoped to head to the Bundesliga. As I expected, I got an interview quite soon after, but what threw me off guard was questioning me working in this country. May I remind you lads, I won the Champions League about 6 months ago. Then the obvious why I want to do a step down question. But then they told me the huge transfer budget I had, which when I looked at their players sold this season did make sense as to why there was such a big budget and why they were sat bottom of the league. That's all of their defenders. After the interview, I was the leading candidate for the job. And just like that, they offered me the job. I accepted the contract and I became the new manager of Bayer Leverkusen. Their team didn't look as good as I thought when they showed me the team report. It doesn't look like they have a proper goal scorer or a good defender in their side, but it's still a good base to start off with. And I took a look at the staff and I winced painfully. This is awful. Luckily, they have a technical director and he's very good, and a former player too. I also found a problem. The squad is massive and full of players who definitely aren't good enough for this league. Now, I just highlighted the bottom half all in one go and I set the transfer list just to save time, and it was transfer listing 19 players. Now I take them over after they've just beaten Mainz 3-0 under their caretaker manager and have Stuttgart and Hamburg up next. There was a couple of injuries, but I still felt like this was a good team and this 3-4-1-2 shape that I had set up. But we didn't exactly get off to a great start with 2 0-0 draws. So I did make a couple of more changes changes to the instructions and I changed a player role or two. The good thing was that we were against bottom of the league, Werder Bremen, but the bad thing is that they destroyed us 2-0. The set piece police will love it that my first goal came from a free kick, but finally Rijkaard scored a goal from open play and we picked up my first win at the club against Cologne, followed by another loss, and January included 3 of the top 4 to play. We genuinely could be in a relegation battle during Glory Hunter right now. I sold midfielder Palacios because he kicked off about the results lately, then got himself sent off, which made me fuming. And I cried into a pillow as I watched Erling Haaland lift another Ballon d'Or on the telly. I miss you. So I got to work and I signed my first player, who I'll be honest, when the scouts recommended him, I thought was a new gen. But no, Onyekbule from Basel cost just short of £10 million. Similar story, to be honest, to the second signing, Junior Krupi, who we paid a little more from Lorient to help score some goals as he already has 10 this season. And yeah, I'll be honest again, I was finding it hard to attract players to a relegation fight inside, and this was one of the best defenders I could get. And that's only really because he was in the Serbian league and had a release clause. I already had planned a transfer for the summer too, bringing in Bijlo in goal on an end of contract deal. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. Results had gotten better and we were through to the next round of the DFB Pokal after beating Bochum. But after scoring in that game, Krupi got injured and will miss the next 3 weeks, including the Bayern Munich game which came up next. They battered us 3-0 and we had another injury to a new player. This one was a lot worse and he was out for 2 to 3 months. I seen a very good player in Eric Garcia pop up on the transfer list and I instantly needed to sign him. I was shocked he wanted to join us and we got the job done. What an acquisition that is. Suddenly we had confidence and we took on current leaders Wolfsburg and beat them 1-0. On deadline day we signed 2 players. First off, Omar Sanchez, who was transfer listed at Manchester United after only making 3 appearances, signing in the summer, a young hungry striker from Uruguay. And next, a more familiar name, Max Aarons from Manchester City, who was again on the transfer list, who improves our right back position. We had around £46 million left in the transfer budget, but I didn't want to spend it all as I kind of fear that that's not going to increase in the summer, which by the way, I was right to assume. Anyway, February brought the cup draw and of course we get Bayern Munich, who knocked us out of the competition fairly comfortably if I'm honest. Which, speaking of the DFB Pokal, is my favourite looking trophy. In February, we added 5 points and in the league, we only lost to Leipzig, which was a good sign. And we pulled ourselves out of the relegation for now. Following this, we played Dortmund and pulled off one of the best results during my short time here at the club so far after falling behind. Goals from Rijkaard against his former club and a fantastic pass found Nieheim to bag a winner. We still can't establish a main striker to score our goals because a few games later, without any, I gave Krupi a shot up front after his injury and he scored 2 goals in another win against Mainz. It's April and our top scorer has just 8 goals this season. I'm used to this man bagging 3/4 of that in 1 game. We are still struggling around relegation with just 5 games left. And our fixtures all include teams around us or Cologne who is fighting for Europe. And they only managed to find a winner against us in the 94th minute. Against Hamburg though, Fabian Rieder missed a penalty and the follow-up rebound as well. Not great. But then eventually we broke them down in the second half and Onyekbule was played through and he slotted in the winner. Against Werder Bremen we relied on a solid defence again, but not only did they keep a clean sheet, but Max Aarons got the only goal of the game. Those 2 wins secured our safety to stay in the Bundesliga next season and I am relieved. And we celebrated that by absolutely destroying Schalke on the final day 6-2, which included 3 goals from Omar Sanchez. The young Uruguayan was fantastic, maybe proving to me that he is the guy that we can rely on next season to push this relegation battle inside closer to the European spots and hopefully maybe even snag a Europa League spot. Or I apply for Leipzig, who just sacked their manager, who could actually finish in the European spots if Bayern Munich beat Frankfurt in the DFB Pokal final. But instead, Frankfurt caused a huge upset and beat them 4-1, and they took a Europa League spot for themselves. So I began rebuilding this team and I noticed Kieran Tierney was transfer listed by request, so I matched the valuation of 24 million and I put an offer in. But he decided to join West Ham for less money instead, the absolute snake. But on the 1st of July, we welcomed 3 new signings. Of course, the goalkeeper was one, but after unsuccessfully going for Kieran Tierney, I went for Tyrell Malacia, and I brought in the Dutch defender for just 15 million. And coming off the back of one season in Saudi Arabia, I also signed Mariba from Al Nassr for £20 million, a world-class potential midfielder who can do many different roles. And before you know it, our first Bundesliga game of the season came around, and we started the campaign against Dortmund, and our lineup with a brand new system was missing Florian Wirtz from the starting 11 due to an injury. I also, by the way, sold Rijkaard to Cologne very recently for £20 million, but I had a replacement on its way already lined up. But before that, the first game of the season is here, and it seems like the first impressions are that we may avoid the relegation scrap this season, because Omar Sanchez put us 2 goals up and Krupi netted a third. And a reminder, this is an away game. Dortmund pulled one back, but Sanchez got his hat-trick, and it's 4-1 win. So that replacement striker, it's Nelson Viper, a fantastic all-round striker who is very good at almost everything. He's 6'4" as well, so he's got a bit of a presence up front, and we spent £30 million on the German. So it's been a good start to this season. I think the tactic will be better with the players that we've brought in, and I'm happy with the changes I've made since taking over the club in the relegation zone. I'll see you next week for the next episode. We have begun our journey in the Bundesliga with Leverkusen, but when we took them over, they were in a relegation fight. I literally went from winning the Champions League with a star-studded squad to bottom of the Bundesliga. But that's the move we needed to progress our Glory Hunter story. And after a very good transfer window in January, we managed to turn things around on the pitch. And we secured our safety for the next season in the Bundesliga and avoided relegation. And we continued to recruit through the summer, beginning our first full season in Germany with a win over Dortmund, as well as selling our main striker, replacing him with Nelson Viper from rivals Leipzig. We followed the early win against Dortmund with a match at home against Hanover, and took a comfortable 2-goal lead going into halftime with goals from Florian Wirtz and Krupi. Our opponents pulled one back right after halftime through Clemens Hoffmans, but it was the Uruguayan youngster Omar Sanchez who snagged the third and put the game to bed. But we put ourselves in deep trouble right away when we visited Gladbach, as they scored within 9 minutes and got a second after the 25th minute. 2-0 down, we are in trouble, but Omar Sanchez, the kid that started the comeback for Leverkusen when he beat the keeper to the ball. But it wasn't until late in the second half, with just 5 minutes remaining. Onyek Boule levels the score to make it 2-2, and just before we enter injury time, the same man put us 3-2 up, and we remained on our winning streak. The transfer window closed, and with us spending £68 million, we sold £40 million, but I think the squad is looking in much greater shape now. And our fantastic start to the season, we have the champions Bayern Munich coming up after the Frankfurt game. The Frankfurt game in which we completely dominated them 6-1 with Krupi scoring 4 goals. But the champions were always going to be a different beast, and they scored within the first minute of the match. We did put up a good fight though, especially considering the game was in Munich. In fact, we also went to 2-2, and we scored the 5th goal to take the lead right on the stroke of half time. But Zakarian, the Russian, scored another in the second half, and an own goal put Bayern back in front, and unfortunately Vidovic scored the last goal of the game, and we were humbled 5-3. We followed that with a fantastic win and a great bounce back against Werder Bremen. Krupi again scoring 2. I still haven't started Viper because of the performances of him and even Omar Sanchez, who got a goal as well in the 3-0 win. Both guys were top scorers of the league, and Krupi with the highest average rating. And we were currently still sitting in top position despite losing to Bayern Munich simply because of their loss to Dortmund. Unfortunately, getting to the top is always easy. Staying there is the hardest part. And the following match with a draw against Stuttgart was when we dropped down into second place. Florian Wirtz scored 2 goals in a home win against Hertha Berlin, so I thought we were still going to put up a bit of a fight, possibly for the league title. But the 3-2 loss to Cologne that came after kind of hampered my belief that we would put up a serious fight. Bayern created a 5-point gap just after 9 games, and Sesko caught up with Krupi as the top scorer of the league. So when the DFB Pokal second round match came round, I was kind of relieved for the break in the league matches so we could regather ourselves, and our opponents Heidenheim held on until the floodgates opened on the 80th minute, where we scored 3 goals to make it on paper look like an easy contest. Nelson Viper finally scored for the club though, and yeah, there were 2 tap-ins, but it was the 2 tap-ins that we needed in a 2-1 win against Hoffenheim. Kruppi was still scoring goals all around him though, with 5 in the other 3 games around that win, with only 1 loss against Leipzig. But throughout December, Nelson continued to score goals, including the opener against Mainz in a 3-1 win with a cracking header, and the first goal in the 2-1 win against Dusseldorf. And the big German scored 3 huge headed goals against Union Berlin, all in the first half and all in a game in which we dominated and won 8-0. We were in fact 7-0 up by half time. What a match. But it wasn't like Kruppi hadn't been scoring himself. He got 10 goals in December alone, which all in all turned out to be a very good month for us. But it's Dortmund and Leipzig in the cup up next. You could also jot down another Ballon d'Or win for Erling Haaland this season. Maybe Kruppi will win it next year. The head of Nelson gave us the lead against Borussia Dortmund, but they were gunning for us after the early result against them in the opening day, and after they equalised, they had the audacity of scoring from a near post corner in the 95th minute. And I wonder if the set piece police will be down in the comments section about that one. Anyway, let's pick ourselves up again in the DFB Pokal against Leipzig. The orange ball was out in Leverkusen for the rain, it seemed, in early January as we welcomed Leipzig with a junior Kruppi goal. Leipzig gave us a loss not so long ago, and their team is full of big names, and Szoboszlai bends one in the far corner to equalise. Fabian Rieder then netted a penalty on the stroke of half time, with the game closing out at 2-1. Max Aarons put us 3-1 ahead. Leipzig did get a second goal in injury time, but we held on to progress in the competition. I really thought Omar Sanchez would be our standout striker this season, but it seems like he is the third favourite now, because Nelson Viper and Junior Kruppi have started to form a wonderful partnership, scoring more goals. Although in the following win against Gladbach, I did play Sanchez up front with Nelson Viper, and they both scored 2. Maybe I just have 3 really good goal scorers now. One thing we are missing though is a decent centre-back, and I found a phenomenal German new-gen at Dortmund, and I put a bid in for 38 million. The funds for the deal came when I sold a couple of fringe players throughout January, including Thiago Almada to Schalke for 13.5 million. And the centre-back Yanni Wagner became a Leverkusen player. Although the big deals around the world, like the leaders of La Liga Real Madrid, they sold Endrick to Manchester United for over £100 million, who also bought Raspadori. Kruppi has well and truly took charge of the Golden Boot race, but we are currently in third behind Dortmund, with Frankfurt away and Bayern Munich at home next. Kruppi wasn't available for the Frankfurt game though, with fitness problems, so with the strike force of Sanchez and Nelson Viper, we still give Frankfurt a very hard game, and Viper picked up the man of the match performance with an assist and a goal. We risked Kruppi in the next match, still with some fitness worries, but it was Bayern, and it actually paid off as he played a big part in the only goal of the game. We did drop points however in the league against Werder Bremen, but a Wirtz hat-trick helped us beat Stuttgart 5-0. In the DFB Pokal quarter-final we faced St. Pauli, and Nelson Viper scored a banger of a volley. And with the strike force of dreams that was back in action, Junior Kruppi got the second of this 2-0 win. We then pulled Hertha Berlin in the semi-final, which will be played a little later, but funny enough, that's the team we have next in the league. And they bloody cheated and scored a near post header in the first half. Quite embarrassing too, because they also scored a second with a player that we loaned to them in January. But that brought on the rage of our players as well, and Junior Kruppi smashed in to make it 2-1. And his mate Nelson Viper wanted to get involved, and then he equalised. Now, Stefan Bajcetic is a centre-back / CDM, but you never would have guessed that with the way he smashed in this winner at the near post. We rescued a point against Cologne in the following game in the 91st minute. We had another former player score against us against Schalke, as Thiago Almada probably really enjoyed that one. But what's more enjoyable for me is that the fact that Kruppi's on fire and your defence is terrified. Oh, and Nelson is also still bagging in goals too. He got the winner. And again, even on the days where maybe these two aren't scoring, we have Omar Sanchez as backup who still can. With 6 games left, we are 8 points behind Bayern, but we have produced a gap in second to Dortmund. And Kruppi has 30 league goals now. He did miss the game against Leipzig in the league, but Nelson put on another man of the match performance, scoring 2 goals and putting us 2-0 up. Leipzig got a goal back for them to give them hope, but Ilyash Maripa secured the win in the 93rd minute. We travelled to Mainz and they were reduced to 10 men within 20 minutes. Ideal. You'd think we'd take advantage of that, which we did through Junior Krupi, but then Mainz got a late equaliser and kind of embarrassed us with a 1-1 draw. But it's semi-final time and it's Hertha Berlin. Former player in Julian Brandt then set up the on-loan player to score against us again and make it 1-0. We pushed big time for an equaliser, but fair play to Hertha Berlin. They were fantastic on the day, they scored a second goal, and they knocked us out the DFB Pokal, which is not great for Glory Hunter. The 3-0 win against Dusseldorf was exactly what we needed to follow that loss, which secured Champions League football next season. Kind of a problem considering we need the Europa League, but it's still an achievement. We finished the season with 2 more wins against Union Berlin and Wolfsburg, and you would be surprised to see how close we actually finished to Bayern Munich, who did drop points after winning the league, but there we are, 2 points behind them. And there is Krupi with 33 goals in 34 games, and we also have the top 3 assisters of the league as well. The board hasn't really given us much of a budget next season, but there's still room to improve, and that's because our finances are £71 million in debt, which is kind of worrying. Arsenal won the league in England, Milan in Italy, but with Roma still there in second place, and Real Madrid have dominated Spain this season, so I was hoping maybe we would see Barcelona job possibly come up. But no, the only jobs with vacancies were Chelsea, our former club, Leipzig and Frankfurt, and I remembered Leipzig finished in 6th place. It caught my eye, but because Hertha Berlin made the final, they dropped out of the Europa League qualification and put Leipzig into the EC2 instead. So for right now, I guess we will stay put at Leverkusen, keep going for the German League and the Cup into season number 9, and focus on the Europa League later on. Did we overachieve last season? Probably. We didn't add any trophies to our Glory Hunter cabinet though. But with a lack of any job prospects going around, we are going to stay put at Leverkusen for now. Hopefully at some point we can stop Bayern Munich from winning 20 league titles in a row. But with finances like this, it certainly isn't going to help. In other news, PSG won the Champions League, capping off their treble. Monaco thought by trying to sign Nelson Viper, it might help them put up more of a fight. But I have no intention of selling the big German striker. I was, however, going to offer out 10 fringe players I have no plans for. And my scouts found me a very good left-back/CDM. And I pursued that signing for Rayo Vallecano, eventually picking him up for 27.5 million. Reports were telling me about the fantastic progression Obradovic was having, and I agree, he is looking fantastic. But with our tactic the way it is, having 3 centre-backs, I still really feel like we could do with 1 extra quality centre-back for squad rotation. I tried to pursue this defender from Frankfurt, but the deal fell through. And then I was made aware of one of my favourite players having interest in signing for us, from the European champions as well. I instantly put a bid in. And oh boy, was I excited to confirm the signing of Lisandro Martinez. Going into the first weekend of fixtures for the new season, we had spent £56 million on 2 defenders, but sold a massive £48 million as well. And I was still rejecting more bids for Nelson Viper. Our lineup for the DFB Pokal first round was a strong one too, including Liche in that wide centre-back role. And as expected, we did win rather comfortably, but it was the performance I was paying attention to, and we did really well, having another 27 shots throughout the match. We started the league campaign with Nelson Viper scoring a penalty against Cologne, and it was only the 12th minute when Florian Wirtz found him again to slot in off the post. Wirtz managed to get 2 assists, and Viper with the hat-trick before Cologne got their only goal just before half-time. Big Nelson started the season on fire, scoring in the next game too against Union Berlin and actually using his big head to get a brace. But just when we started getting comfy, the complacency kicked in, and Union scored in the 86th minute, and really annoyingly, they equalised in the 92nd. We then defeated Hanover and look ahead to our first Champions League fixture, which ideally we do need to do well in because of how bad our finances are. On deadline day, Bayern tried to rattle Eric Garcia's morale by putting in multiple bids, but he was happy to stay put. Lisandro Martinez scored his first goal in a 1-0 win against Hamburg to kick off September. We once again dropped 2 points because of a really late goal against Gladbach at home, however. But we ended the month with a good away win in which Krupi got the final goal in a very convincing 5-2 win. We also secured 3 points in the Champions League against Dinamo, but I'm intrigued about next month's fixtures as we welcome Inter Milan to the Bay Arena. Those 2 draws have really meant we've fallen behind Bayern Munich already this season, who have won all 6 of their matches so far. are. They actually sold nearly 3 times as much as money as what they brought in transfers. But that team is absolutely disgusting to look at with Declan Rice as their captain. We left it very late though against Inter Milan, and it definitely looked like when that first ball was played through to Krupi, it was offside, but we will definitely take it. We got 2 goals in the last 2 minutes of the match and gave the fans a lot to be pleased about. Our 3 forward-thinking players began to really enjoy themselves though, as both Viper and Krupi scored 1 each, both assisted by Wirtz, who had already scored 2 himself in this win against Bielefeld. Krupi then got himself a hat-trick in the next fixture too. And against Schalke, it was a very similar story, with all 3 players scoring goals in which the other 2 guys was getting involved in the build-up. This is becoming very beautiful to witness. And the sexy football was backed up by 6 wins throughout October, including a second round win in the DFB Pokal. Trouble is, Bayern Munich still haven't dropped any points yet, and we play Leipzig next. And Max Aarons, who's played a big part in our success lately, twisted his ankle in that Schalke match and will be out for a while. No sweat though, we only needed to stick 1 past Leipzig to get the 3 points. Doing the same against Hertha too, as Florian Wirtz bombs through and slots it home. Although, good job we did keep a clean sheet, because Nelson Viper also missed a penalty.
He's bloody missed it!
Another hat-trick for Krupi in the league, and we cannot stop scoring goals right now. Well, other than the match against Benfica. Bayern went 12 wins from 12, and we played them after our next game against Mainz while we were still unbeaten ourselves. Oh, I just had to go jinx it, didn't I? We brushed ourselves off though and took to the field with confidence against Bayern Munich, and we even got ourselves ahead when Rafael Luiz made a great forward run. But it was the man with the armband who got the equaliser for the champions, putting it right in the bread bin. And then one of the smallest guys on the pitch headed home the Bayern winner, which destroyed all of our momentum, and we drew and lost our last 2 fixtures. And then we somehow went to Dortmund and we won 1-0. The damage was done in the league though, and we found ourselves trailing in second by 13 points at the turn of the new year. A new year that Bayern Munich also celebrated their striker Sesko winning the Ballon d'Or and stopping Haaland from getting 6 in a row. Our debts wasn't getting any better, by the way, despite our good performances in the Champions League. What did catch my eye though was Bilbao was currently sitting top of La Liga with Real Madrid in 3rd. Our run of form after the winter break didn't get much better though, after Krupi put us 2-1 up against Cologne. Our former player Rykov scored an equaliser and we conceded a winner in the 90th minute. In the 3rd round of the DFB Pokal though, we travelled to Stuttgart and Krupi put us 1-0 up. They did, however, squeeze in an equaliser from the spot, but we still progressed through to the next round when Max Aarons' cross turned into the most hilarious own goal scored all season. Union Berlin are bottom of the league and we trounced them 6-0. Hanover are second from bottom and we beat them too. But in the Champions League we lost 1-0 at the San Siro to AC Milan. And despite taking the lead when Liverpool came to Leverkusen, they proved to be too strong for us and scored an equaliser from Gakpo and then scored a winner with one of the best new gens on the game. Behind the curtains, I nearly signed this lad at City instead of Vlahovic, by the way, when he was at West Ham. Even though we lost 3 times, we still qualified automatically in the Champions League phase. But Cologne have overtaken us in 2nd place and Bayern Munich still not have lost a game yet. Viper and Krupi continue to do what they do best in the Bundesliga, and they scored loads of goals, helping us defeat Hamburg and Gladbach. But I began to get a bit worried when the goals started to dry up and it cost us points with important matches and Newcastle in the Champions League to come up. However, when the DFB Pokal quarter-final came around, I shouldn't have been worried too much because we played Cologne, who obviously are having a great season themselves, in 2nd place, but we completely took control of the match and really put ourselves in a great position at 3-0 before they did finally score. But even then, Krupi got a second and put the tie to bed, which put us in the semi-final against Eintracht Frankfurt, with the other tie to be Bayern Munich versus Heidenheim from the 2nd division. March began with a big win and 4 goals for Lord Nelson, but then things started to go downhill. We were stuffed in the Champions League away leg to Newcastle 5-2 and were subsequently knocked out of the competition when we could only conjure up a draw in the 2nd leg at home. And it got worse in the League 2 and we just stopped scoring and lost 3 games on the bounce throughout March. It wasn't like we were missing many players from injury either, just Max Aarons who broke his toe. We were just playing crap. Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga already and still haven't lost a match, and despite us losing 3 games in a row, we still have the same points as 2nd place Schalke. We put ourselves 3-2 up against Wolfsburg in the following match on the 88th minute, and yet we still conceded in the 92nd and dropped another 2 points. And we went into our semi-final off a run of 2 more losses to Mainz and the champions Bayern Munich. But when we took to the field in Frankfurt for the semi-final, we found our form again and began scoring goals due to the mistakes the Frankfurt defence were making. But our confidence returned and we were able to score 2 more goals and put ourselves into the final of the DFB Pokal against Bayern. Hold on, what? Bayern Munich, at home, who still haven't lost in Germany all season, lost in this semi-final with their strongest team to a second division side, 3-1. So in fact, we will play in the DFB Pokal final against Heidenheim instead. We played Frankfurt in the league right after our semi-final and we beat them 2-0, so we got our groove back. Nope, spoke too soon. However, there is a positive, and I swear this is not on purpose, but the league is so tight under Bayern, we've actually dropped into the Europa League spot. However, we do have Dortmund in our last game, and we could drop even further into EC2. But on the final day of the season, with Max Aarons back to full fitness, influencing the game, Krupi, Nelson, and Omar Sanchez all managed to get on the score sheet, and we took the 3 points with a great 4-1 win against Dortmund. And we currently finish in the Europa League spots. But our focus now shifts to the DFB Pokal final as another trophy we can add to our Glory Hunter cabinet. And we go with what I think is our strongest 11, which we were very lucky to play. Heidenheim line up with a 4-2-3-1 with our former player who was released last season, Iker Bravo, up front, who actually scored the 3rd goal against Bayern in the semi-final. The deadlock was broken after just 20 minutes when we broke down the left-hand side, cut it back to Florian Wirtz, who was perfectly placing it into the corner. I felt sorry for the Heidenheim keeper because the 2nd goal came from the rebound of an almighty shot that he saved, tapped in by Lord Nelson. However, with 5 minutes to go, they did try a valiant comeback and Iker Bravo did actually score against us, a cheeky sausage. But we were still too strong and the ball was played back for substitute Mariba to tap in a 3rd. And we are your DFB Pokal winners, my favourite trophy, and yes, you might say it was a very lucky win given the fact that we played this opposition, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and they knocked out the unbeaten champions Bayern Munich, let's not forget, to reach the final. And that's another one to cross off for the challenge. And that trophy actually puts us at the halfway point of achieving Glory Hunter as we go into season number 10 of the 20 seasons. But what is next? Will we stay here in Leverkusen? Probably yes, because once again the only job available is Chelsea. They finished in 8th place with Newcastle winning the Premier League for the first time, and Roma, our first club of this challenge, win the Serie A again. I'm mega proud. We've added another trophy to our cabinet with the cup final win against Heidenheim, helping us lift the DFB Pokal with Leverkusen. In the Bundesliga, however, we finished in the Europa League spots, which, to be fair, is one of the 6 trophies we are still pursuing. Our team is decent, but our finances are a joke, and they've only given me £12 million to improve this team.
You are joking, aren't you? No.
I have no idea who is going to be able to stop Bayern's dominance. The Champions League was won by Manchester United, who beat Real Madrid in the final. Speaking of the Champions League, multiple players now want to leave because we don't have it this year. Where's your ambition, lads? We are playing Thursday nights this season for the one and only Europa League. Although Chelsea, who of course need a manager, wanted us back, bless them. Krupi has a fairly low release clause, but no interest in signing a new deal, so that's perfect. I spent all my money though on one player, simply couldn't resist picking up Pablo Torre for less than £12 million, because 1, he is a great player, and 2, Florian Wirtz is adamant he wants to leave. I obviously don't want him to, but we agreed that £85 million would be the number I would accept a bid for. Our first game of the season is the Super Cup against champions Bayern Munich, and our squad is very small and we already are missing Krupi with a 3-week injury. I don't believe it though, we actually took the lead. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is our season that we overcome Bayern Munich and win the Bundesliga. Or maybe, whilst I'm still dreaming about this, they've already equalised and then took the lead and we're about to score 3rd goal. Never mind. We need some extra reinforcements, so I signed this Brazilian centre midfielder from Newcastle on loan. We head to Hoffenheim in our first game of the Bundesliga this season, and it was exactly the performance we were hoping for. Wirtz got an early goal within 10 minutes, and Viper continued troubling defenders with his pace and power, and bagged a couple of goals from great strikes, and then secured a hat-trick from a corner. We replicated the same result in the following match at home to Freiburg with 3 fairly late-ish goals against 10 men. And then we lost 2-1 to Hertha Berlin. Our fixtures for Europa League are in, and I'm excited, with the most difficult game being a home tie against Tottenham. And our first match in the competition was a very entertaining back and forth win against Copenhagen in Denmark, in which we came out on top 4-3 at the final whistle. We did drop 2 more points in the league, but got 6 more points at the end of September. And it was straight into another stellar performance in the Europa League, not just as a team, but individually for our big German Lord Nelson. He managed to get himself on the score sheet another 3 times in a 5-2 victory against the Finnish champions HJK. And we breeze into another 3 points in the next match too, where Pablo Torre got his first goal of the season, as well as taking the original corner and finding himself in a great shooting position. Returning to the Bundesliga, and Krupi is back in full force after his injury, picking up 2 goals against Schalke in this 2-0 win. The rest of the month was less impressive though, with a draw and a loss in the league, but we did beat Frankfurt in the second round of the Cup. But don't go leaving me now, we've got Spurs and Leipzig in a doubleheader. But just before that, we head to Stuttgart, and Krupi scored 2 more goals. The Europa League then, and against Spurs at 0-0, Tyrone Malacia managed to pick up a second yellow card, reducing us down to 10 men. But this game only had 1 goal in it, and that was scored by Leverkusen midfielder Rieder. On to the Bundesliga match against Leipzig, and Viper gives us the lead on the 45th minute. But Leipzig got a penalty and levelled the score at 1-1. But with just 2 minutes to go, the former Leipzig player Nelson Viper banged in a second and secured a win and 3 points. A trip to Belgrade in the Europa League against Red Star, the former European champions of course, but Junior Krupi was still on his hot streak of goals, and he bagged himself another hat-trick in this intense atmosphere that the Serbians are well known for. Unfortunately, that was followed by a bit of a tonking at the Allianz Arena. What's more annoying is we actually went 2-0 up in this game against the champions before they turned it all around, with the final score landing at 6-3. 8 points behind them in the league. It would take something special to pull that off, unfortunately, but we do sit top of the Europa League after 5 wins from 5, so our eyes are firmly set on this competition. Back with a win against Gladbach though, with Big Nelson picking up the only goal of the game, a game in which we also had a straight red card when Obradovic scissor kicked a player from behind. I thought you got the ball too, fella. We ended the month going into the winter break first off against Dortmund, and Nelson scored the opening goal at the Signal Iduna Park after just 8 minutes. But Dortmund managed to get an equaliser before half time, and as we were pushing for a winner, Dortmund countered us and set free Makoko, who scored the final goal of the game. We were having a really bad time, getting slapped by Frankfurt 4-3 at home as well. A rough patch with only 2 wins from 5 in the league, but we did get another Europa League win against Slovenian side Olympia. It's January though, and Mbappe is celebrating his 2nd Ballon d'Or, and my email box is full of clubs putting in bids for my players. I rejected all of them, but the Obradovic bid, which I actually negotiated with PSG for a total of £76 million. It's money that we simply could do with right now. I also accepted a bid for Onyekbule from Dortmund, but he rejected their contract despite asking to leave on so many occasions. Upon returning from the winter break though, we thankfully didn't continue playing like our bellies was full of mince pies and chocolate, and instead, like we give ourselves a kick up the backside after 2 defeats to Dortmund and Frankfurt. Viper got 2 goals, there was a standout performance from Pablo Torre too, and it was a good 4-0 win. Now I could live with the fact that Augsburg knocked us out of the cup in the following match, but the 4-3 loss to Freiburg in the closing stages of the next one stung a bit more. Thankfully though, we had Europa League matches at the end of the month to cheer me up, as it's a competition we've looked the strongest in this season, and on these 2 occasions it was no different, with another 2 emphatic wins against Genk and Malmo. Junior Krupi even managed to get back into goal scoring ways against Hertha Berlin in between our 2 European matches with a lovely brace and a 2-0 win. Still, our league position is good but not great. We are way off Bayern Munich at this point, however the Europa League performance is 10 out of 10 with 8 wins from 8. After the sale of Obradovic as well, I brought in a replacement who caught my eye pre-season in Luis Rodriguez at Monaco. Obviously we had no money back then, but an exceptional defender from Portugal. I got the deal done in January and paid half the price of Obradovic's transfer. February was a beautiful month for us. 5 wins, all in the league against some tricky sides with everyone playing their part. The draw for the Europa League also took place, and we were given Spurs, who, remember, we had already beaten earlier this season, which happens very soon. It was also at this point my mind started to think about other jobs, with us not getting any closer to Bayern Munich in the league, and some interesting jobs popping up at Lyon and Atletico Madrid. I could even apply for one and ask to take over at the end of the season, or would that just be a bad idea? Atletico were also still in the Europa League too, so that one really did make me curious. But upon studying their squad, they have a lot of players in their mid to late 30s, and they have first team players including Ricci and João Felix, who are out injured for multiple weeks. So I stayed put, and we went into the Spurs first leg match with our 9th win in a row against Hamburg, so we were very confident. And we showed that in London when Florian Wirtz gave us the lead just before half-time. And defensively we were spectacular, up until the 95th minute. That's when we left Udogie free at the back post to equalise. Our league form continued to be strong on the weekend and we battered Stuttgart 5-1. We had terrible luck though, with both our goalkeepers getting injured for the second Spurs game, so we played this 15-year-old. The guy didn't do too bad considering we allowed Tottenham to have 13 shots on our goal, but they did score on the half-hour mark, which Bijolo probably would have saved. What didn't help matters when we were a goal down was Alberto Luengo snapping a Spurs player and getting a straight red card, making this task almost impossible. And we bowed out of the competition when Liel Abada scored a second at the second attempt. We got a draw with Leipzig after again without a first-team goalkeeper, but our league campaign is already set up, I believe. We aren't simply going to catch Bayern Munich and we're 9 points ahead of 5th, but I have a dilemma. Sure enough, we ended the season really strong, not losing a single game and even drawing with both Bayern and Dortmund. The only two teams that managed to finish above us in the league, but here's my dilemma. Leipzig just finished in 6th place in Europa League. They also have a very good team and are underperforming. They have huge budgets. They are massively rich. We certainly are not. And they just sacked their manager. And for some reason, I'm the leading candidate for the role. I ended last season with a dilemma. We are miles off the pace of Bayern Munich in the league, and the finances at Leverkusen are too bad for us to improve this drastically. But the Leipzig job has become available, and I'm the leading candidate for the role for some reason. And they have a lot of money to spend on their team, which quite honestly already has some fantastic players and who hold a lot of value if I was to sell to bring in replacement. But the likes of Salazar up front and the South African centre-back Malek are players I've admired for a while. And there are world-class players on the transfer list for good price that I would love to sign who I can't afford to at Leverkusen. So I think it's pretty much an easy decision to try and make the jump to Leipzig, so I apply for the job. And I wasn't waiting too long before they offered me an interview. And reports are in the media that I absolutely nailed that interview. And they were right to think that because Leipzig offered me the job and I accepted and I became the new manager. And the finances were a joy to behold. My first signing though was Cesc Fabregas as my assistant manager. Upon going through the squad, I noticed Jackson was in his last year of his contract, he was wanted by a few clubs and he was refusing to sign a new deal, so I offered him out to be transferred, knowing full well who I'd want to replace him. Hello Francisco. Offers came in from across Europe for Jackson and I accepted a bid from Barcelona. And just as he departed for the Catalan club, we welcomed in Francisco for £58 million. There was a lot of interest in my other striker, Salazar too, but I have no intention of selling. Even some daft rumours about him moving to Gladbach. Pochettino takes on the financial chaos of Leverkusen though after my departure. And I signed one of the best right backs in the world from Leeds for £45 million. Forgetting that I already had bids for this Scottish right back from Rangers for 25. I did end up selling £73 million worth of players that I felt I didn't really need or could get better anyway. And so I picked up a versatile defensive midfielder from Cadiz who can fill many different roles on the pitch with ease for £50 million. I still knew I needed one more player, but this was a tactic I began playing around with, kind of a 4-4-2 with an attacking midfielder and inverted wingbacks. And in the first match against Wolfsburg, I fielded what I thought would be close to my starting 11. But Wolfsburg's Vitor Roque scored 2 goals, and they beat us 3-1. Not a good start. In the match against Gladbach, though, we found ourselves behind at home from the penalty spot. But the left-back Gutierrez pulled us back level 5 minutes later, and just before half-time, Francisco showed his class, beating the keeper to the ball and put us 2-1 up. And then our new strike force of Salazar and Francisco combined to make it 3-1. The quick turnaround was too much for Gladbach, who could only get a second from the spot. Francisco was the man of the moment, getting a hat-trick in the following match at Bochum. And my final signing of the window was Vischer, a Dutch left-back I picked up from Ajax for £25 million. A total of £200 million spent is enough, I believe, to put up a strong fight in the Europa League this season. After all, I haven't mentioned yet, but that's our main target this season, with Leipzig finishing in 6th place. I was starting to have my doubts about the tactic after the 1-1 draw to Freiburg, who also missed 2 penalties. So before the final game in Europa League, I switched it up to this almost 4-4-2 tactic with a more attacking left winger. And not to say that I'm a genius or anything, although that may be true, but we did score in the first minute of the match. The football we played was so much better than previous, and we created 32 shots on goal, with Francisco scoring our second and our third. The Dutch side from Rotterdam did pull one back in the second half, and Salazar scored another goal and we win 4-1. We unfortunately though dropped points to Hoffenheim, where Francisco was taken off. He was so bad. But he was back in form soon after against Cologne, scoring a hat-trick in a 4-1 win. His mate Salazar got the other goal, and I'm hoping it was just a bad day at the office for Francisco before, as this was what we are going to see throughout the year. He got another one in the following match against Austria Vienna in the Europa League. Bit of a ropey start for us though in this league campaign, and Dortmund is putting up a good fight against the dominance of Bayern Munich. The month of October was the month of Salazar. The guy was unplayable, especially against Frankfurt in a game where he scored all 4 goals in the away win. A month where only 2 points was dropped and we scored 13 goals in the Europa League as well. Overall, it was a great month. The 2 points dropped against Bremen was disappointing at home, but the other results we will definitely take, and the games to come are very winnable too. It's December we should be worried about though, with the games against my former Leverkusen side, Dortmund, and then Bayern Munich all in a row. Francisco started the month on fire in the Europa League, once again getting on the score sheet 3 times, and that's what stands out to me is how different his goals are that he is scoring. It was a good day all around though, as Salazar also got on the score sheet too in the first half, even allowing our backup striker to come on in the second half and score 2 goals as well. A horrendous tackle from our Scottish right back Jamie Morrison hindered our chances against Ajax, but we still managed to take the lead, and we weathered the storm until the second half when Van Duyven played Joe Willock through to equalise. In the league though, we just kept winning games and scoring goals, including a 7-0 against Hannover 96. And hello there, we currently sit in second with a game in hand and only a point behind Dortmund, after Bayern dropped down to 4th. This is after they lost 1-0 to Gladbach, who overtake them in 3rd. With Leverkusen up next, I was shocked to see Pochettino had already been sacked.
Sorry, what?
And they've only gone and hired Roberto Martinez, as they currently sit in 11th place. And I'm not surprised after seeing the players they sold, included Omar Sanchez to Bayern Munich. I'll give Roberto Martinez his due though, his Leverkusen side was a lot tougher to crack than most teams lately, but we still stole a 1-0 win. Dortmund on the other hand was very different, and we ripped through them and scored within 15 minutes. However, it didn't play out how we wanted it to. In the second half, Moukoko equalised after the keeper saved the original shot, and then the set-piece police will be fuming to see that Dortmund scored the winner from a corner. So we seeked our redemption at the Allianz Arena in the 3rd match of our triple threat of difficult matches, and this one we certainly outperformed the rest and was the best to play in. Zakarian did make it 1-1 for the champions, but we got the last laugh when Samuel Lino scored the winner. We backed up that run in the league with a win against Genk in Europa League and a big victory against Hertha Berlin as well. And despite that loss to Dortmund, we overtake them in the league to go top of the Bundesliga while sitting in 3rd place in Europa League. It's January though, and Benjamin Sesko wins his 2nd Ballon d'Or. But even though it's a brand new year, we are still starting how we ended it, with many goals from our duo of Francisco and Leandro Salazar. Francisco picked up yet another hat-trick, making his £58 million price tag look like an absolute steal, while Salazar got 2 more goals and a 5-0 win against Wolfsburg. But then in my eyes, disaster struck as Man City matched the release clause of our best defender. He was absolutely vital to us this season, and as I panicked to find an unexpected replacement, the cracks started to form. First off, with Dortmund eliminating us from the DFB Pokal in the 3rd round. Then against Gladbach, we conceded early from a player we sold to them in the summer. We had to rely on a goalkeeping howler to equalise, but the draw is all we got. Also squandering a 2-0 lead against Freiburg. We did secure the signature of Xavi Simons for the end of contract deal though. He stayed at PSV for a long time, but I think this is an excellent free signing for us to get in the next season. I finally brought in a replacement for our centre-back in Leon Klaus. The Austrian isn't quite as good as the South African defender that we lost to Man City, and he did cost £75 million from Everton, but for now it's a sensible transfer. We enjoyed more success in the Europa League with another win against Antwerp, with Francisco scoring 2 out of the 6 goals we scored on the night. Also linking up wonderfully with Salazar in the final league phase match of the Europa League against Trabzonspor for a 3-1 win. Still rocking the top spot by 3 points though at the end of the January transfer window. And it's going to take some doing when we have Francisco in the form that he's in during February to knock us off the top spot as he keeps scoring more goals. Not to mention how we are dominating games as as well. 4 league wins during February, only conceding 1 goal and a 5-1 win, but it's Real Betis in Europa League that's our main focus turns towards now. Although I don't want to gloss over the fact we opened up a 5-point gap in the league with just 9 games to go, and that's why I spent the money on that centre-back. But you would not believe how we took the lead against Real Betis. Yep, that's the worst home goal you'll ever see. We were awful to be fair though, and Real Betis fought back against us and equalised in the first leg in the 93rd minute. In between that and the second leg, we got a 2-0 win against Werder Bremen, where the set-piece police will be having fits in the comments section about these 2 goals from Klaus. It did take us until the second half before we actually opened the scoring in the second leg, but once we did, the floodgates opened up and we ended up continuously putting them under pressure and finding the net on multiple occasions, eventually sending our fans home happy with a 4-0 win, and we're into the quarterfinal, where to be fair, we did get the easiest draw against Copenhagen. We are on a roll though as we return from European competitions with a 6-0 win at home to Eintracht Frankfurt, and continued that momentum into the Hamburg game with another 2-0 win, and I'm starting to believe we are actually going to win the Bundesliga here, because Bayern Munich are tanking this season compared to previous years, and we are 6 points clear of Dortmund in second. Our end of season run is once again Munich, then Leverkusen, then Dortmund, all in a row. Europa League quarterfinals though, and we start the home leg where we score within the first minute of the match through Salazar. Copenhagen did equalise soon after though, but Salazar has been living in his strike partner's shadow this season, but he's still been quality. Francisco though did score 2 goals as well, and Fagioli also is another name who put in an excellent performance in this first leg 5-1 win. Second leg was an entertaining draw, and we progress into the semi-finals 8-4 on aggregate. In the league though, before that we had beaten Mainz 2-1 thanks to a Francisco winner, and he also scored 2 goals in a 5-0 win against Hanover before we faced the champions Bayern to win the Bundesliga trophy ourselves. We only need a draw, and fortunately we are the home side, but that doesn't stop Bayern trying to cause an upset and snagging the opening goal. Luckily, before half-time, our Argentine striker Salazar stepped up and got an equaliser, and after our high press in the second half was too good for them, we caught them napping and Salazar put us ahead. Again, we just need a draw to win the title, and in the 92nd minute, Jamal Musiala scored, but that is it. And Leipzig are your champions of the Bundesliga. And we add another trophy to our glory hunter cabinet. Will the Europa League trophy be next? Germany is now complete. What do we do after this? We've only gone and won the Bundesliga in our first season at Leipzig. Francisco has 33 league goals with 2 games remaining. A big part of it was how bad Bayern Munich have been doing though. Even still, we fully deserve it after this season, and it's another trophy added to our glory hunter cabinet. With this being season number 11 of 20, we could also win the Europa League, giving us just Spain and France to conquer in the remaining 8 seasons. Speaking of the Europa League, we have just overcome Copenhagen in the quarterfinals. And in the semi-finals, we met our old team Roma, and it was our star man back then, Tammy Abraham, who scored against us. I forgive him though. We went without scoring until the 87th minute, where Leandro Salazar popped in the equaliser to make it 1-1 into the second leg. Tammy is still decent though, age 35, although I don't see how getting older means you just lose all your strength. It just doesn't seem realistic to me. Second leg in Rome, I imagine. I had a standing ovation from the fans as I came out, and Leandro Salazar bags another in the tie to put us 2-1 up on aggregate, until Roma start an attack just 8 minutes later and score through Carlos. But unfortunately, from my former side, this is our year, and we are going into the final, and our Italian midfielder Fagioli knocks out my former Italian club, and we're into the final of the Europa League against another former club, Chelsea. Here it is then, the final of the Europa League, and our lineup is a strong one with Salazar and Francisco up front, a couple of slight injuries including the goalkeeper. The Chelsea lineup looks quite unrecognisable to the team we left for Manchester City, with only 4 players still there now, lining up in a 4-2-3-1, but as the teams make their way to the pitch, the nerves are kicking in. We took a huge gamble changing clubs last year for this competition, and now we're in the final. And with winning win the title already. We know this is our last chance with this team to win this competition. What a game we have here too, as we snatched the lead just 12 minutes in when our right back hit a shot from the edge of the area. But Chelsea weren't phased, and new manager Brendan Rodgers has steadied the ship, it seems, and they come back with a goal not long after from Aslani. To say this was a back and forth game would be an understatement, as we countered an attack and set Francisco free on his lethal left foot, 2-1. But again, it wasn't long before Chelsea come back at us, and it was their other centre midfielder, this time Rodri, who brought it back to 2-2. There was still time for us to score another before half-time, which we did through Francisco's second, albeit a tap-in. But the half-time team talk from Brendan Rodgers caused Chelsea to dominate proceedings at the start of the second half, and Valverde brought it to 3-3. Ato Smith's 73rd minute goal put Chelsea ahead for the first time in the game, and I began to worry big time, taking the lead 3 times already until Gutierrez pulled off the most outrageous cross to find Francisco, and it's 4-4. But with 5 minutes left, our new centre-back Leon Klaus scored the winner. And we are the Europa League champions, and I just know once again the set piece police will be raging in the comments, but we have done it 5-4 in just 90 minutes. Such an entertaining game, and with the lift of the trophy, it was a sigh of relief. The second trophy gained from our very short time at RB Leipzig, and it's similar situation to Man City now. I'm not really sure what we do. What's our next step? It's barely been a year at Leipzig, so I can't really resign just yet. Looking at the insecure jobs, it's only really Marco Rose at Atletico, who has been shocking for years now. They finished in 7th place, which is roughly where they have been the last 5 years. And their team is incredibly poor, as well as their finances too, and I don't fancy that again. But then, hello, Real Sociedad and Marseille jobs have popped up, with both teams finishing in 8th place in their respective leagues, and their teams aren't that bad. Sociedad with the likes of 36-year-old Oyarzábal, Sucic and Arda Güler, but a lot of players are in their mid-30s. Financially, they're okay too. £20 million budget is going to help us mount a title challenge though. Marseille's finances are a lot worse, however. But call me crazy, they have a better team in my opinion. Desiree Doué is phenomenal. They have Bella Kotchap in defence alongside an aging Aya, but I really like their striker too. He's still Francisco, don't get me wrong, but he'll be great in this league. I decided to see what happens if I resign from my job. Again, it's a big risk. I was hoping it would trigger a manager merry-go-round, but no, they hired Benfica manager Abel Ferreira instead, who isn't part of Glory Hunter. But a month later, it finally happened. The PSG job became available as Petkovic retires. And this job does not come around very often at all, so I could smash through the French League and Cup situation within a season or two, leaving me with a very good amount of time to attack the Spanish side of Glory Hunter. Xabi Alonso took the Marseille job, so that option was then gone, and the Espanyol manager took the Sociedad job. But I really didn't fancy that job, thank you very much. The fans consider me the leading candidate for the role too. Liverpool offered me an interview, but my eyes are solely set on one role right now. It took ages, but a huge sigh of relief as PSG finally offered me an interview. And I was shocked that the budget was only £10 million. But we nailed the interview and they offered me the job, and we got it. Arguably the best job possible to get for a Glory Hunter challenge. The team had some recognisable names, of course, like Mbappe and Evan Ferguson, who we knew moved here, but also some familiar faces for me too, like Luengo and Obradovic from our time at Leverkusen. Mbappe at 34 is still really good, and so he should be with 725k a week in wages. The tormentor of our time in the Champions League with Chelsea, Evan Ferguson, is still here in his prime. And they still also have Kai Havertz, who I sold here too. But they have backup strikers in Rasmus Højlund and Matisse Tel. They have Manuel Ugarte as their main midfielder, but the lack of depth in this position. Defense is still solid though, Gvardiol, Inacio and Obradovic. With Montanaro as a backup, who also is on the transfer list right now. I found out why there's no budget too. Luengo was a very recent transfer for £86 million from my former club. It's not a bad move though, probably one that I would have looked into very similar. I moved the wage budget to transfer, and it was enough to sign a backup fullback as well, as we only have one left back, so Terzic, a Croatian right back from Everton, aged 23. We then sold the Italian centre back who was transfer listed to Newcastle for £36 million, £10 million profit from what they signed in the season before. And I wanted to use that money to bring in this Italian centre midfielder that I've been following for a few seasons, who moved to Tottenham, Marco Evangelista. He is superb as an attacking threat from that centre mid, and Tottenham have barely been using him and only only played him 17 games last season with only 9 starts. He agreed on a squad player contract for only 87 grand a week. Pretty much a steal. I know what you're thinking though, why aren't you going after Francisco? I'm sure we will reunite again soon. Just like that, our first match is here in the Trophy de Champions against Monaco. And we set out in this attacking diamond formation, but had both Singo and Gvardio missing from the starting 11 on our defence with injury and suspension. Monaco's team is decent though, they've got some great players and a couple I've been following too. It wasn't exactly a dominant performance, but we still picked up the 1-0 win from Kai Havertz. Our first league game came against Nice and it was a lot more one-sided, with us taking a very early 2-goal lead after Mbappe slotted in his first of the season. Matisse Tel got on the score sheet in the first half too, and after half-time he was joined by Evan Ferguson, who made it 4-0, and there was still time for one more when Kai Havertz picked up the fifth. In just my second competitive game in charge, we had Mbappe score our first hat-trick at the club. At this point, the legendary striker was still lethal against Reims away from home, giving us that top spot thanks to goal difference in this really early stage of the season. I had bids come in for Zabani from Barcelona, but it was just no need to sell. Against Nantes in the following match, I decided to give Rasmus Højlund a start, replacing Ferguson alongside Mbappe up front. He won a penalty for us just minutes into the match, which Mbappe stepped up to take and missed. Rasmus Højlund continued to do hard work for the team though, and he stole the ball and laid it on the plate for Mbappe, who couldn't miss that one. But Nantes equalised on the hour mark from a set piece, and it took until the 92nd minute for a corner to be swung in and Nasio to snatch 3 points. We definitely got away with that one. The man of the match of the final game before the transfer window closed was Matisse Tel, who got 2 assists and 2 goals in a 4-1 away win to Rennes. So far it's so good, 4 wins from 4 with a big plus 13 goal difference in the French league with our new team. I still can't believe we managed to land this job, it doesn't come up very often at all. But we have 4 trophies in our Glory Hunter cabinet still to win, with 8 seasons remaining, and we are at the perfect club to get 2 of them. And we kinda need something big to happen in this league, as money sucks in Spain. But I'm excited to continue this journey and hopefully complete this challenge with you. We spent just 1 season at Leipzig in Germany after moving across from Leverkusen, and we were rather successful in our time there, lifting 2 trophies, winning both the Bundesliga trophy and the Europa League, leaving us with just 4 trophies left with 7 seasons remaining. Quick maths. So we took a gamble and resigned from our position after such a short period. But it paid off soon after when the PSG job became available, and after nailing the interview we got the job and became the new manager of the French champions. Still with some of the best players in the world, including Mbappe. And we still brought in some new talent to complement them. Playing really well in our first few games of the season, scoring lots of goals and winning 4 from 4. With the window now shut till January, we focus on our fixtures ahead, because we've got some big clashes in the Champions League to come, including that first one against Jurgen Klopp's Real Madrid. But we returned from the international break with a match in the French League to begin with against Auxerre, and it wasn't long before we found ourselves 2 goals ahead thanks to both strikers getting on the score sheet. But they did respond with a goal themselves from Yuri Alberto. But I wasn't worried at all, and Evan Ferguson scored a second and we won 3-1. Which, funny enough, is the same scoreline in the Real Madrid game. Only this one is a little different in the fact that the team that scored 3 goals and ultimately won the game wore white shirts and called themselves Real Madrid. But I really like bouncing back with a 4-0 win, but you know what's even better than that? Is when you win the next 3 games 4-0 each time. How satisfying. Although what does worry me is that Mbappe missed another 2 penalties in the last match too, after already missing 1 earlier this season, and we aren't even in October yet. We also redeemed ourselves in the Champions League though with a tantalising performance, scoring 5 goals against the old lady of Juventus. Although I will still have words with whoever it was that thought wearing a black away shirt for Juventus was a good idea when we were navy blue, that is a terrible decision. They literally had a bright pink kit that they could have wore, probably Roberto Martinez's choice, who pops up once again. Anyway, it's 8 wins from 8 so far in the league, but Monaco are on our ass and they have been in fine form lately, and Hugo Duro has scored a lot of goals. And it's exactly who we face in October after Marseille as well as Lyon at the end of the month. Well, that isn't a good start. Against Monaco it was a tight game until we won a penalty and I made sure Mbappe didn't take it.
He's bloody missed!
Damn you, Ruben Neves. Thankfully, though, the deadlock was finally broken on the 85th minute thanks to Evan Ferguson, who also put the icing on the cake in the 92nd minute by scoring again. I'll take that. He scored again in the Champions League in the following match against Basel, where we won 1-0 in Switzerland. He also scored in the next game against Metz, in a 2-1 loss? What? Against Lyon, we continued playing terribly and conceded in the 21st minute, but thankfully from our attack, the ball was scrambled across and it landed at Evan Ferguson's feet again to tap in an equaliser. And then Kai Havertz whipped in a free kick in the second half, and Tarasov scored one of the best goals of the season and we snatched a win. So in a month where Mbappe failed to score a single goal, we actually lose 2 matches and yet still stay top of the league, with Lorient being the team currently only 2 points behind, because Monaco have also seemed to hit a bit of a brick wall with consistency. Mbappe scored in the first match of November in a 4-0 win against Salzburg in the Champions League. And we travelled to Lorient next without Evan Ferguson, but Matisse Tel played up front in his place and he set up Mbappe's first, as well as getting on the score sheet himself for the second. He almost picked up a brace, but when the shot was blocked, it was then put in for an own goal, 3-0. Then we dropped 2 points at home to Toulouse. Miracles do happen though, as we finally score a penalty and we send AC Milan home, eating a 2-0 loss in the Champions League. Penalties against us are dispatched with ease. But press the alarm please for the next goal of the season contender, as Evangelista rockets in an overhead kick. And he was crucial in the winner against Lens 2, setting up Højlund, who put it away. Monaco are proving to be difficult to shake off at the top of the league, just 3 points behind us. And we are also doing quite well in the league phase of the Champions League, and the Coupe de France starts very soon in the 9th round. December was weird because we started off smashing Montpellier 5-1, before drawing 0-0 against Troyes. Our opponents in the Coupe de France are Laval in the 3rd tier. Should be a breeze, right? Nope. 0-0 after 90 minutes and we went to penalties. What? I know, right? And Matisse Tel missed the first penalty as well. Thankfully, our goalkeeper was an animal and he saved their last 3 penalties, and then we scraped through to the next round. How have we played such a strong team and not beat them in 90 minutes? The following match is in the next round against Strasbourg too. But it's January, Ballon d'Or time, and look who came in 3rd, and then 2nd, and look who came in 1st. I missed you, Francisco, you beautiful man. I noticed a certain Tchouameni was just 6 months left on his contract, and I just had to approach it just in case we stay here for a 2nd season. And we secured the signature of the midfielder for the next year, whilst also losing Kai Havertz, who signed for Leipzig. As I said, the Coupe de France match was up next, and we started a lot better against a team in our division than 2 below us, and Ferguson hit a banger of a goal. Mbappe got a second from the penalty spot, if you can believe that, and then he was sent through on goal by an almighty over-the-top pass to make it 3. Strasbourg did get a consolation, but we go through to the next round. And we continued the good form going into the next 2 league matches, although we did have to rely on a very late Evan Ferguson goal to get the 3 points away to Nantes. But then things got a little crazy in the Champions League, because we beat Dynamo Zagreb 9-0 with 37 shots on goal. And then we trounced Copenhagen 8-0. And Mbappe and Ferguson was really having a field day, scoring 7 goals between them. We calmed it down a bit against Rennes in the league though, only scoring just 2 goals, but the clean sheets kept coming, which I was really pleased with. In the next round of the cup, we had another 3rd division side, who by the way had some very sexy kits. We didn't need to go to penalties in this one though, although we did score 2 of them in the 90 minutes, but Matisse Tel dispatched both of them away, and we comfortably put ourselves into the next round, winning 6-0. We drew Marseille in the quarterfinals, and we topped both the Champions League and the domestic league so far. The cup match came early into the next month, and it was another dominant performance from our Parisian team, especially from our Irish striker Evan Ferguson. He scored 3 goals in a 4-1 victory and was a class above the rest today. Into the semi-finals we go. Huge couple of months of results as we keep our winning streak going, which dates all the way back to December, and haven't lost a match since the Metz game back in October. But Monaco and Bilbao up next will be tricky in March. We face Marseille again while Ferguson defies the laws of physics to open the scoring. He also sets up Mbappe's goal to make it 2-0 as well. Marseille did pull one back to make it 2-1 from a deflected goal, which did worry me. Also because we were at that point down to 10 men when Ruben Neves decided to try and end a guy's career on the halfway line, but we managed to hold on to our winning streak, which continued debuted in the Champions League, but ended against Monaco. Although we were lucky that Marcus Felipe's worldie in the 93rd minute rescued us a point against them. And our form as of late opened up an 8-point gap to Monaco, who are still having a fantastic season, as are Mbappe and Ferguson with all the goals, and Mbappe even has 15 assists. He still loves missing penalties in crucial games though.
He is atrocious, isn't he?
He even almost missed an open goal in the same game to open the scoring in the Coupe de France semi-final. And he also had another ball dropped to his feet to make it 2-0 against Nice, who got so bored of Mbappe's luck they decided to score the third goal for themselves. Which is a shame really, because they actually put up quite a good fight in the game, and not only did they score in the first half to make it 3-1, but they even got a second in the second half, but that own goal cost them a trip to the Coupe de France final, where we will face Monaco later on to add that trophy to our Glory Hunter cabinet. We do, however, have to face former side Leipzig in the quarter-finals of the Champions League, where I can reunite with my best friend Francisco. I'll probably take him up the Eiffel Tower or something. Before my bromantic date with Francisco, I had to deal with Leon, who had the audacity to take the lead after just 7 minutes. No sweat though, because literally from kickoff, we played the ball over the top and Matisse Tel equalised almost immediately. And it stayed 1 each until Manuel Ugarte hit a curler right into the top bin in the second half. Maybe I was distracted by the aura that is Francisco, but against Leipzig at home, we only managed to get a 1-1 draw in the first leg after Klaus scored an outrageous headed equaliser. Luckily, Inacio scored the only goal in the second leg. After winning the next 3 league matches, we just needed one more to secure the league title, and Matisse Tel put us ahead after just 2 minutes, but Montpellier wanted to spoil the party and they equalised immediately a minute later. Thankfully, Evangelista put us back ahead on the half-hour mark, and Matisse Tel scored an unbelievable free kick to make it 3-1, and our big Irish striker secured the 4-1 win, and we are French champions. Another trophy to add to the Glory Hunter cabinet with one left to go in France. But before then, it's Champions League semi-final time, and we find ourselves 1-0 down after the first leg at home to AC Milan, with the second leg coming right before the cup final. In that second leg, Mbappe levelled the tie on the hour mark at 1 each, and he has a chance to make it 2-1 from the penalty spot, which he missed again.
Oh, God!
Although in the penalty shootout he did score first, thankfully, and Rafael Leao actually missed. And from then on, Milan were chasing us in the shootout, and even though we have a couple of close ones, we win the shootout and go into the Champions League final, which I still want to do well in. And we face Bayern Munich in that final. But it's Coupe de France final time, and our lineup is one of our strongest. The Monaco team are set in a 4-4-2 formation with a very strong midfield of Diomande and Gravenberch. And although they fell away in the league this season, they are still one of the worst teams for us to play in this cup final. And after just 25 minutes and what looked to originally be offside, Evan Ferguson put us 1-0 up. Hold up though, because it wasn't going to be that easy, and a defensive howler allows Monaco to equalise from Hugo Duro. And panic stations, as on the 75th minute, Mudryk robs our defender and somehow slots it in to put Monaco into the lead. And on the 93rd minute, Gravenberch makes it 3-1 from an amazing free kick, and that's it. It's all over, and Monaco have deservedly won the Coupe de France and caused an upset. And of course, that means we will have to stay here another season in the French League, which isn't the end of the world, but our time is running out to complete this in 20 years. But with the Champions League final still to come as well, we need to win that Coupe de France next season. Monaco prevented us from completing France in one season at PSG. They defeated us in the Coupe de France final and lifted the trophy. To be fair though, they do have a fantastic team at this point, so I wasn't shocked too much. We did manage to add another trophy to our cabinet though, being a little too strong for Monaco to keep up with across the 34 game week season. And although we've already won the competition already, we do have another Champions League final to complete, with Bayern Munich the opposition in the final, and with us missing key players like Evangelista, who is injured. So we did have to settle with a slightly weaker midfield, playing Bamba at CDM and Tarasov alongside Ugarte. Of course, it's a Bayern team we are very familiar with thanks to our recent time in Germany with Leipzig. We know they are dangerous dangerous, and they obviously have stayed that strong for us to be facing them in the final of the Champions League. And their talisman for the last few seasons is a former Ballon d'Or winner, Benjamin Sesko, and he opened the scoring just 5 minutes into this cup final. It took us a while, but eventually we set Mbappe free down the left wing, and his immaculate cross found Evan Ferguson, who fired home an equaliser. But 5 minutes after half-time, Bayern Munich found themselves on the attack again, and a scramble in our box after a shot led to Zakarian putting Bayern 2-1 up. 5 minutes later though, Tarasov bursts down the middle and finds Ferguson, who picks out Mbappe, and his deflected shot brings the two sides level again. And the score stayed 2-2 until extra time when Inacio towered above to make it 3-2. And from there we kept pushing for more, and Ugarte beautifully slotted through Matisse Tell, and it's now 4-2. And right before the half-time of extra time, Højlund finds space behind the defender, and somehow we have scored 3 goals in 15 minutes to make it 5-2. And with that, we are the Champions League winners once again. This time, of course, with a different team, but nonetheless, this PSG side is fantastic. Maybe not our best team yet, but certainly close. Just a few pieces of the puzzle missing. And that win also gave us a personal achievement, putting us in the Manager Hall of Fame top 20 in 18th place, which I am rather proud of. So ideally, we need to improve this team and make us unbeatable in the Cup next year. At least I'm not missing out on big Spanish jobs this summer anyway, because Jurgen Klopp is still at Real Madrid, and Xavi is still at Barcelona, who's won the league the last 4 seasons. We are losing Inacio and Havertz on free transfers though to Leipzig and Barcelona, funny enough. And of course we're bringing in Tchouaméni from Real Madrid and Arthur Theat again, all on free transfers. And the board have also given us £70 million in the bank, which I think I might spend on this player I found on the transfer list at Spurs. The Argentine midfielder Lucas Calvaresi, who is literally 5'4" with 3 jump and reach, but his mental attributes are phenomenal, and he is a brilliant player with great player traits and exactly what I'm looking for to a player to help out our midfield in all different ways. We brought him in for the stated price of £58 million as we approached the middle of July. But I'd also just sold Ibrahim Bamba to Manchester United for £28 million, which left the Calvaresi deal costing us just £30 million. But that left me with around £34 million in my budget. And there was another player on the transfer list that I thought would be perfect signing for our team, Jurrien Timber, an elite level defensive player who can play anywhere at the back and CDM, a perfect squad player for just £31 million. But before he signs, we had the Super Cup to deal with and a chance to get revenge on Monaco, and a look at our new tactic for this season. It's just a couple of positions moved around really, with traditional fullbacks and across the 3 central midfield line instead of a defensive midfielder. But what a strange game, because despite us going 1-0 up from Evan Ferguson just 2 minutes into the match and then doubling our lead from Mbappe on just 12 minutes, Monaco scored 3 goals in 6 minutes, and we had to score an 88th minute equaliser from Zabarnyi to take the game to penalties. And new signing Tchouaméni missed our 4th penalty, and Calvaresi missed the 5th, and Monaco win. Absolutely mental match. We got the Jurrien Timber deal done for the first league match though, and kept a clean sheet in a 5-0 win in which Evan Ferguson was phenomenal and scored a hat-trick, picking up where he left off from last season. Just a deadly finisher. No other transfers took place this window for us, but we did reject offers from Real Madrid and Manchester United for Matisse Tell. However, we did win the European Super Cup, again on penalties though, after Newcastle missed their 2nd, and this time we didn't miss any, with Ternasecki scoring the winning penalty after the match finished 2-2. We also, however, got absolutely wrecked by Lyon 5-1 in the league, and I decided to change the tactic up slightly, making it more of a narrow 4-3-3 with a few player roles changed. We won the next couple of games with it, but against weaker opposition. And our Champions League fixtures will see us host 2 of our former clubs in the opening 2 games in Chelsea and Roma. Brendan Rodgers is still in charge for the Blues, who last season finished in 4th place in the Premier League. And Scaloni is the manager of Roma, who also, funny enough, finished in 4th in the Serie A. But before we welcomed Chelsea, we had a tough league fixture against Monaco, and Evangelista gave us an early advantage. Then from a throw-in, Gvardio's cross found Ugarte all alone in the 6-yard box. Monaco did score a consolation, but we got bragging rights back. The Chelsea game was a tale of 2 set pieces, with the visitors falling asleep in both times for Evan Ferguson to head home the opener and set up the 2nd for Ternasecki. And we continue to win throughout September. That is until Rennes beat us 2-1. Roma next in the Champions League, and a similar story for the Chelsea game as we take an early lead from Obradovic this time. But Evan Ferguson was still scoring the 2nd, and an absolutely outrageous assist from Single set up Tell for the 3rd and final goal. who had also missed a penalty earlier on in this match. But we lost back-to-back games in the league, this time against Metz after being 2-0 up, with the winner being scored in the 90th minute nonetheless. But still, with more wins after recovering our losses, we are just about top of the league by goal difference only against Lyon. The Coupe de France is still only in the 6th round and we enter in the 9th, which is scheduled for December. So let's round up quickly, starting with us dropping 2 more points against Nice, again after being 2-0 up. Following that with a 10-1 win against Nantes, with Højlund scoring 4. A loss to Newcastle in the Champions League, and falling to 2nd behind Lyon. Then we beat 3rd place Montpellier 9-0, before losing again in Europe, this time to Napoli 4-1. And our first game in the Coupe de France arrived, and it was an away trip to Le Mans, who have a beautiful stadium down in the 3rd tier, and a waterlogged pitch. The match was rescheduled almost a month later in January, where the match was postponed for a 2nd time. We only had to wait 3 more days this time and only 9 minutes before Matisse Tel opened the scoring. Our high possession against the weaker side prevailed when they gave Tchouameni way too much space from range and he made it 2-0. Matisse Tel then got his 2nd from the penalty spot, and the home fans even had something to cheer about despite being 3-0 down when they scored on the 75th minute. But we kept it quiet still when Evan Ferguson got a 4th shortly after. We had to play the next round immediately after against Montpellier, and Rasmus Højlund scored an outrageous header from the edge of the area after just 5 minutes. Our opposition was very poor on the day, only mustering up 3 shots with none of them being on target, and Matisse Tel also scored a lovely header, which made Evan Ferguson feel left out, and he also wanted to score with his head, which made it 3-0. Quick break away from the Coupe de France to congratulate Mbappe on his Ballon d'Or win, aged 35, with Evan Ferguson coming in 2nd place too. We are also still in 2nd place in the league, by the way, and in 13th place in the league phase of the Champions League, so we need to win our last 2 games. Which we did, beating Dynamo Zagreb 5-0 with Evan Ferguson scoring a hat-trick of goals, before absolutely chinning Copenhagen 12-0, which helped us finish in the top 8 and we avoided the playoff. And it's off to play Dunkirk away in the next round of the Coupe de France, which is also one of my all-time favourite films made by Christopher Nolan. Anyway, the defence wasn't quite as good here as it was in World War II, and we scored within 3 minutes. Matisse Tel put away a 2nd from the penalty spot, and Tarasov picked up a 3rd just after 22 minutes on the clock. But once again, we gave the home side something to cheer about when they got a goal of their own just before half-time. And then once again, Ferguson shut them up by basically scoring from kickoff. And of course, we followed that with a loss in the league to Monaco. So hopefully we don't make a tit of ourselves in the next cup match against Brest.
Boobs.
We didn't pull off from the star blocks too quickly this time round, and the score stayed 0-0 until the 42nd minute goal from Ugarte. It was swiftly followed by an Evan Ferguson 2nd. And Matisse Tel in the 2nd half completed the scoreline 3-0 on the 70th minute in the quarter-final. And our opponents for the semi-final is Lyon, and the winner will face Monaco. And we want redemption after the final loss to them last season, remember. We followed the cup match with another game where we scored double figures. Before coming up against Lyon in the semi-final, we faced them in the league and doing a very comfortable job of scoring early in both halves, winning the game 2-0. They've in fact dropped a few points recently. We stretched out a lead at 5 points. We played Napoli in the round of 60 in the Champions League and won both legs 2-0. But it's semi-final time against Lyon again in the Coupe de France, and we are without Gvardiol due to suspension. Things started really well when Kylian Mbappe scored from the spot after just 7 minutes. 10 minutes later, and he's down the flank again and assists Evan Ferguson, and it's 2-0. And just after half-time, he's provided Matisse Tel with another assist. At 3-0 down, you think Lyon would roll over, but they didn't do that, and Giorgio Villa took it round Donnarumma and made it 3-1. Lyon went down the left-hand side and played across into Villa again, and my palms are sweating, because then they win a penalty, and Ryan Cherki steps up to equalise, but Donnarumma saves. And we hold on to the 3-2 lead, and we look to face Monaco in the final. Unfortunately though, Liverpool knocked us out of the quarter-final of the Champions League though. But we extended our lead in France to 7 points with a game in hand, and look at the player statistics. We have the top 3 in both goals scored and average ratings. But right before the cup final, we turned into a mess and dropped 4 points, which would have secured us the league title. Our cup final opponents, Monaco, are bang on in form right now recently too, and Hugo Navoa has been scoring lots of goals. Cut final time and we have all of our players fit and available, which is great. What isn't great is this is also Mbappe's final season as he plans to retire, so let's make it a good send-off. The final, of course, being set at the Stade de France Open with an Evan Ferguson goal after just 13 minutes. Then Mbappe almost scored a worldy free kick which Gvardiol headed in off the rebound. Monaco weren't done yet though, and they scored a goal to make it 2-1 just after halftime to put the pressure on. But an absolutely quality cross from Luengo found Matisse Tel and restored our 2-goal lead. But there was still time for just one more goal in the 94th minute when Jurrien Timber put it in to make it 4 at the final whistle, and it blows, and PSG are your Coupe de France winners. And we get our revenge on Monaco after last season's disappointment, a fitting time to end his career for Mbappe as well, with just one win away from a domestic double, which we did emphatically against Nice 5-1. To become the champions of France once again. But most importantly, it was another trophy added to Glory Hunter with just 2 remaining to achieve and 6 seasons left. So it was time to resign from my post at PSG and hopefully find a job at a club with a chance for trophies. My time at PSG has been a blast, and quite successful too. We've won back-to-back league titles in France, and in the second season we lifted the Coupe de France, leaving us with just 2 trophies for our Glory Hunter cabinet left to obtain. So I did the honourable thing and I resigned from the job at PSG. And my assistant Gigi Wijnaldum follows me out the door as well, so now we've just got to hope that this starts a manager merry-go-round and leaves a job available in Spain for us, where Barcelona have just won their 5th league title in a row under Xavi. And a couple of weeks of waiting, PSG announced their new manager, Luis Enrique, who leaves his post at Villarreal, interestingly enough, to take this job, who had just finished in 3rd place, only behind the 2 giant Spanish clubs and 13 points above 4th. Now I'm fully aware of their key player because he has been one of the best players in the world, the right back Javier Alborz. Have you ever seen a better new gen fullback than him? The rest of the team though is a little underwhelming. Their best players are now way past their prime. There is a couple that could be good in the future, but nobody else that comes close to Alborz's quality. They also don't have the biggest budget in the world, so would be a bit scrappy with the finances. But I still applied anyway. I just don't see Barcelona sacking Xavi anytime soon, and I can't exactly wait around for Klopp to retire. Although he is 68 now, Real Madrid seem to be happy with him finishing 2nd all the time. Kinda like me and your mum. Villarreal wasted no time after applying to invite me to a job interview. And of course they offered me the job. I'm in the bloody Hall of Fame, remember? And just like that, I am the new manager of Villarreal. Straight away in their scout reports was 2 fantastic talents, these central midfielders from the Czech Republic. And similarly again from Serbia, a really cheap talent, and he was wanted by my old club PSG. It seems like Luis Enrique was copying some of the scout reports and took them with him, I suspect. But despite us both putting in bids, he chose to join us in Spain for just 6.75 million. And I even got Svoboda too. He cost a little bit more at around £8 million, but the centre midfield was a weakness in our team that they did both improve. I didn't realise till now, but they had also signed Gonzalo Ramos too while I was applying for the job for £8 million. He's far past his prime, don't get me wrong, but still good at age 34, just lacking that blistering pace he once had. He hasn't had the best of time ever since he left Real Madrid, where he was scoring 17 goals a season quite often, and even played for Barcelona as well. In mid-August, I sold Mario Dorgelis to Marseille for around £10 million as he was surplus to requirements after our 2 centre midfield acquisitions, and that helped me fund agony from young boys, which is a saying I really need to be careful of repeating.
Check his hard drive.
Our fixtures were in for the start of the season, and with Celta and Bilbao first, we also have the champions Barcelona quite early in the season. The first game of the season though, and we had a few players out with injuries, but when Eljornin found Ramos and to open the scoring early, I was confident we could plough through, especially in the second half when Ramos won the ball back and new signing Pesic found him again to rifle in a beautiful second. But Celtic got a penalty and scored because our goalkeeper is an idiot, and the Celta fans, then being at home, got behind and with a bit of luck pushed forward and just wanted it more, scoring a second and stealing 2 points from us. But after giving the lads a rollicking, they made up for it by battering Bilbao 4-0. And Ramos has 4 goals in 2 games. We got one more signing through the door before the window shut, bringing in Colombian midfielder Gonzalez from Wolfsburg as a rotation option for the multiple positions. Our Champions League fixtures were also in, and we have Tottenham away in the first match with Bayern Munich in there in the middle, at home, and at the end we have Liverpool and of course our former club PSG away. I've learnt that an away trip to Betis is always going to be difficult because of how good the atmosphere is alone, but Ramos wasn't fazed as he put us 1-0 up. However, once again we dropped 2 points because we were unable to defend our lead and conceded with the game ending 1-1. Which was the same result as the following match against Atletico Madrid, albeit this time we were the side crawling back a point after going behind. We finally got a win in September though when we beat Spurs 1-0. The champions visited us next and they were superb and ripped us open just before half-time with Ansu Fati scoring the opener. But almost straight from kickoff, we switched the ball out wide to the left when Santiago then found Ramos and we equalised immediately. And with 10 minutes to go, we then took the lead from a corner. And while Barcelona pushed for an equaliser, they simply gave Gonzalo Ramos way too much space and he scored a third and final goal in extra time against his former club. After a dodgy start to the month, we ended it really strong, beating Valencia after the Barcelona game. And that was when I finally settled on my tactic for this season after changing multiple things, with a 3 at the back and attacking wing backs with a lone striker and 2 segundo volantes in the midfield, which never really seemed to let me down. Other than in the next match when we drew to Cadiz. And they even went down to 10 men after stopping our counter-attack in the final minutes of the match. Absolutely disgraceful. It was still shaping up to be a good month though, with just Getafe left to play as we picked out 2 more wins, but still only sat in 5th place after 9 games. I spoke too soon I guess, although it wasn't a loss. Real Sociedad was a job we almost applied for in the past, but in hindsight we definitely made the right decision going down the route we did and taking the job at bottom of the league Leverkusen. We landed in Spain now and making this Sociedad team look very amateur, beating them 3-0 without letting a shot on target. We then drew with Bayern Munich 0-0, and then we smashed 6 goals past Sevilla in an emphatic win with us putting 26 shots on goal. November came to an end with 2 more wins in the league and the Champions League, but Real Madrid was on the horizon. And they sit top of the league currently, 5 points ahead of us, but we do have the top scorer of the league and their former player for them to keep quiet, Gonzalo Ramos. And that's exactly what they did. Despite us having 8 shots on goal with an XG of 1.52 and Ramos having a few shots himself, better than their 1.37, we lost 2-0 to the league leaders. But we still trudged along, scoring more sexy goals and winning more games. And even scoring 94th minute winners away from home against Mallorca in a great 3-2 triumph. Real Madrid might have been 11 points ahead of us and we still sit in 3rd place with a game in hand, but that could take us into 2nd where we go into the new year and above Barcelona. We somehow top the Champions League phase as well, and I'm just great at this competition it seems. My boy Evan Ferguson rightfully won the Ballon d'Or with Matisse Tel finishing in 2nd place, which I was really proud of. And I also added this guy to my shortlist as possibly the next superstar striker I wanted to manage in this Glory Hunter journey. He's 6'5" as well. Bear with though, because the next 2 months are going to be crazy with the Super Cups, the Copa del Reys, the Champions League as well as our Liga matches, all against elite European teams. We lost the Super Cup semi-final on penalties after missing 2 out of the 5 against Real Madrid. And Bilbao also gave us our first league defeat in a while, defeating us 2-1 after we pulled it back to 1 each. We comfortably got through the next round of the Copa del Rey though, 6-0. But the game of the month was against Liverpool in a superb performance where we went 2-0 up. As you can see, it also looks like the stadium is getting renovated at the minute, but the atmosphere was still fantastic I bet, as we put 4 goals past them to be the one guaranteed team to qualify to the round of 16. Only team to do it with 1 game remaining. And that final game being PSG, my former club, before a very tricky February round the corner as well. A move I was all too familiar with happened just 5 minutes in against PSG. Evan Ferguson rounded our goalkeeper to score, but it's something I brought with me to Villarreal and Ramos is just as clinical. PSG got themselves back ahead on the 20th minute from a scramble in the box, but this is why Alborz is the best fullback in the world, because he can produce crosses just like this, picking out his man, and 2-2 was the final score. I got 0 deals done in the window after rejecting a few offers. But we've begun opening up a gap between us and Barcelona, who are struggling this season and are 18 points behind Madrid. However, just before the Copa del Rey, we also dropped points to a 93rd minute equaliser against Real Betis. Copa del Rey time, and we got an early goal against Alaves through Oscar Tomic. But Alaves exploited the match engine and scored from a corner, which took it to penalties, and then they got what they deserved, and justice prevailed as they missed 2 penalties in the shootout to our 1, and we go right into the next round in the next match, which was the complete opposite to the Alaves game. We dominated Atletico Madrid, beating them 5-0 and scoring some great goals, including 3 goals from corner set pieces, and I don't want to see any comments from the set piece police down below, you bunch of snitches. First leg of the semi-final though, we conceded to Betis and played absolutely awful, needing a much better performance in the second leg at home. In the meantime though, in the league we will continue to embarrass Atletico Madrid even more. But in the second leg of the Copa del Rey, it was a corner, would you believe it, that pulled the tie back to evens, with the game going to penalties once again, and we were confident after our recent shootout win until we missed our second from Gonzalez. But Real Betis missed their second penalty too, and both teams started to look more and more nervous as we both scored our third and then both scored our fourth penalties. And then the best fullback in the world stepped up, and he missed his.
He's bloody missed it!
Our penalty shootout away from the final of the Copa del Rey in our first season. I'm still rather proud. Would have been a difficult task though to beat Real Madrid, who was demolishing Barcelona in the other semi-final. Speaking of difficult tasks though, we have Man City in the Champions League round of 16. Another one of my former clubs. We take the loss at the Etihad, probably to a standing ovation again as former Champions League winner here. But in the second leg, we showed exactly why I'm the manager with the Hall of Fame background, because we completely outplayed this City team, which was some of the best players in the world. Not only leveling the tie, but putting us 2 goals up. City did get a late goal, but we still beat them 4-3 on aggregate. We also put in incredible performances in the league during March, and April will see us face leaders Real Madrid 3 times as we draw against them in the Champions League as well. They are a class above everyone else though, still only losing 1 and drawing 1 in the league or season. We are in second place and with a 10-point gap in front of Barcelona. We went into the game against Real Madrid in the first leg on top after beating Sociedad 4-1 in the league. And I've been giving Iago some starts as he's been scoring a lot of goals for me recently. The 21-year-old youth academy product has been suffering with a bit of an identity crisis, having not really the best attributes to play in his natural position as a striker. So I've slowly retrained him to play in the number 10 role instead as a shadow striker. Unfortunately, he couldn't do anything against Real Madrid though. They scored early in the second leg and our Champions League run came to an end despite us getting a consolation. And they battered us in the league 5-1 too. With the Barcelona game up next, we could restore our 10-point gap between us and all but guarantee a second place this season. However, what we didn't expect while playing cautiously was Pedri to hit a worldie into our top corner. And after that, we went chasing the game and it cost us dearly, conceding a second goal. Iago gave us help picking up another with half hour to go, but Pedri this time round found an assist for Barcelona's third and we suffered back-to-back league losses. I then decided to start playing Agony from Young Boys. And what a decision that was, because he linked up amazingly with Iago and capped off what I think was his first start of the season with a hat-trick against Mallorca, and this is exactly what we needed. He then scored 2 goals in a win against Osasuna, and yes, I'm really glad you noticed. Both of the goals were set up by Iago as well. How exciting. He was even scoring nod-ins from corners to the absolute legend, and linking up with Iago in the final game against Granada, where he scored 4 goals in 46 minutes. He only cost me £4 million, remember, and he got 9 goals in the last 5 La Liga matches, securing a second place finish in the league and making me very excited for next season, where we've also signed one of the best goalkeepers available on a free transfer. After leaving PSG, it didn't take us too long before we got a new job in Spain with Villarreal, and I think we put in a good account for ourselves in our first season, finishing in second place, reaching the Copa del Rey semi-final. We also have one of the best players in the world, and I've just created a fantastic partnership with my youth graduate Iago and new striker Agony. They aren't exactly the best looking players in the world, but it's just been working well. We've also secured the signing of a fantastic French goalkeeper on a free transfer, but the board have only given us £32 million to spend, which isn't going to be enough to improve our defence, because the defender I'm targeting has a release clause for £51 million. million, so I had to sell to buy. In other news, Luis Enrique was sacked after just one season at PSG. They finished in second place behind that very good Monaco side. They ended up hiring the current Everton and former England manager Raphael Wiki instead. To start raising funds, I also sold 32-year-old defender Coppola to Inter Milan for 8.5 million, and the Albanian midfielder Gini to Lyon for 6 million, raising our budget to just £52 million, enough to sign the defender we wanted. So we put in the bid to match his minimum fee release clause to Batiste, and he was happy to join us. Definitely a step up in quality for us defensively, and younger than our current defenders too. Liverpool have just put in a bid for the striker I wanted last year. Hilariously though, he rejected the move, but then he eventually signed for Real Madrid on deadline day. I also found this insane attacking midfielder from Sweden, playing at Al Shabab in Saudi Arabia, and I was shocked to discover I could afford him by moving available wage budget across to the transfer budget. Karl Malmqvist is a fantastic player. Technically he is a bit of a wizard, but he has also got fantastic vision and leadership. The start of our season sees us play a little bit more of the lower half of the table, so I'm hoping for a good start. And the Getafe game to kick things off had us flying out the blocks with our midfield really shining through. Pesic scored from the first from range, the second goal came from a fantastic work down the right wing, and our other centre midfielder Svoboda slotted home, and I was chuffed as punch for the third with Malmqvist scoring on his debut. He also set up agony in the 1-0 win against Mallorca. It was the day that we lost Svoboda though for 3 months, so I needed to bring in some backup. So we signed 2 loan deals, a Mexican player from Arsenal who can play in midfield and at both fullback positions, and a Spanish CDM from Barcelona as well who could also play at centre-back. Champions League fixtures are in, and we go away to the Italian champions Napoli in the first contest, ending with former club Leipzig and of course Francisco and Manchester United. Our first tricky match of the season came away to Real Sociedad when they took the lead in the 29th minute through Sebastian Farah, but a Malmqvist free kick from miles out brought an equaliser when Agony banged in the rebound. Just before half-time, Malmqvist was involved once again, and this time Pesic found the net to put us 2-1 up. Then Real Sociedad scored an own goal, so cheers for that, with substitute and 35-year-old Gonzalo Ramos scoring a 4. Nothing to show in the Champions League match though, 0-0 finish. Dull. Agony was back in the goals, picking up 2 in the following 3-0 win against Espanyol. Good to see that he's continued his form from the end of last season. And in the next game, from Malmqvist to Alborz to Agony in yet another 3-0 win against Batiste, in which Garitano scored against his old club. Our performances have been so good, we've been getting a lot of bids for our players. 6 wins in, and we are neck and neck with Real Madrid and Barcelona, all on 18 points, until it all went downhill, because we suffered back-to-back draws against Granada and Las Palmas, and Pesic even missed a penalty, the bloody spud, followed by losing to a 94th minute goal against Valencia at home and a 1-0 loss. So we went from non-stop scoring to not scoring in 3 league games, and we have some big games coming up in November you cannot miss. Thankfully, we did manage to win the last game of October against Real Sporting, and Agony was back in the goals too, picking up his first hat-trick of the season in the 4-0 win. But unfortunately, Real Madrid didn't drop any points in that time, and we now sit 7 points behind them just like that. Well, we bounced right back, stuffing Celta Vigo 8-0. In the Champions League, we beat Chelsea 1-0 thanks to a 91st minute Gonzalo Ramos goal, and jot down the 9th of November for performance of the season as we visited the Nou Camp. We snagged the first goal right on the cusp of half time, but the second half we continued to shut them out, scoring 2 more goals, defeating them 3-0. Also only keeping them to just 2 shots with 0 on target. And we kept up the great form, defeating Bilbao, and in the Champions League, Agony once again had a glorious day, scoring a hat-trick against Ajax, who in the next match also scored a 95th minute goal against Sevilla, which rescued a point for us after being 2-0 down and 3-1 down. We faced Marseille in the Champions League before our match against the champions Real Madrid, and we are confident with goals coming in from our 2 attacking midfielders in the 2-1 win. But unfortunately, Real are still way too strong for us. We had the chance to equalise at 1-0 down from the penalty spot too, but Gonzalo Ramos missed the chance to change the trajectory of the game. We did not let that affect our confidence though, smashing through the next 3 league games without conceding a goal, including a 4-0 away win to Atletico. The Ballon d'Or for 2036 was won by my old world-class striker Francisco, who's about to hit his prime seasons now, and we play him this month. We also go into January, still have no transfer budget remaining, so expect a quiet window. But we did start our Copa del Rey campaign against our wonderful team named Zamora CF. Shout out to Bobby Zamora, by the way. And we beat them quite comfortably, 5-0, with Yago winning man of the match after picking up the first 2 goals of the game, off the back of some fantastic work by Agony, also a combination I'm still loving seeing. We of course then faced our former side Leipzig in the Champions League, and I fell behind 1-0, but we popped up in the 89th minute with an equaliser from substitute Peter Gonzalez. Before getting tonked by Manchester United in our last league phase game though, with them scoring 2 goals from their phenomenal striker Danielson Silva, who doesn't sound French, but he is, and they picked him up from Nice a few seasons ago for over £120 million. That result left it really tight in the league phase, and we somehow still scraped into the top 8 qualifying to the round of 16. Maybe winning the league is out of our reach already though, despite it only being January and us being in second place, because Real Madrid have played 21 and won 21. Klopp is absolutely cooking at age 69. So let's focus on the Copa del Rey, because our 4th round tie is away to Eibar, and Yago has given us the lead in the 9th minute. A fast attack starting with Fonseca at the back brings on Yago's second goal, and in the second half, and then again starting with Fonseca, just 2 passes and Marçal is through and scores a 3rd. Straight into the quarter-final away to Celta Vigo, and the combination of Malmquist and Adrian Mar sees us go 2-0 up in just 12 minutes, both from corners. However, what is going on with our goalkeeper here? Just allowing Celta Vigo to just give the ball to them and score. Luckily, Mar got his hat-trick though, again from a corner, and still we're in the first half. Celta did then score a wonderful free kick, but we put ourselves through to the semi-final with a beautiful team goal scored by our left-back. The 3rd Copa del Rey match in a row now, and it's the first leg of the semi-final away to Granada, but with goals from Javier Alborz and Agony in just 25 minutes, we got into our groove, and in the second half, Agony scored his second, and we head into that second leg 3-0 up. We had an easy task progressing through to the final, further than what we got last year with a 4-1 win in the second leg at home, despite Granada scoring after just 6 minutes. Once again in the Champions League though, we've been drawn against Manchester City. No surprise either that the team that we'll be facing in the Copa del Rey final is either Real Madrid or Barcelona. Right, on to Manchester City in the Champions League, and we've had a very entertaining contest against our former club. After Moises Caicedo levelled the score, Svoboda within 4 minutes fired us back ahead on Manchester City at the Etihad. But of course, never count them out. They equalised in this first leg in the 89th minute. Again from a player who looks absolutely incredible. But that same player missed a penalty in the second leg. The penalty that cost Manchester City from progressing to the next round in the penalty shootout after extra time. Putting us against, of course, Real Madrid in the next round, just before the cup final. Probably against Real Madrid. What an intense month that's going to be. We got a huge win during March in between the Manchester City games, however, beating Las Palmas 8-0. And Real finally dropped some points in the league, drawing and losing their first matches of the season. They're still 18 points clear, however. When we faced them in the first leg of the Champions League, though, they were showing us exactly why they have been that good. We actually managed to snag an equaliser, though, and I was naively confident, because after that, they battered us. Their high press was intense. They were so difficult to break down, and they were lethal on the counter-attack. Extremely clinical, and they put us away with a 4-1 loss. We somehow won the second leg, but our Champions League run this season was over. And of course, they also beat Barcelona and met us in the final of the Copa del Rey. But there was only 1 goal in this cup final, scored by the team in yellow. The underdogs of the Copa del Rey final, after being completely swept in all other competitions by Real Madrid, we held on strong, keeper keeping a clean sheet against the strongest attack I think I've ever seen, including that striker we wanted to sign. And Villarreal are your 2037 Copa del Rey winners. With that being our 11th different trophy that we have won in Glory Hunters so far, with just 1 remaining, which definitely won't be winning this season. However, we go down as a Villarreal legend already, because that Copa del Rey win is their first in the competition and only their second major trophy the club has ever won, alongside that Europa League win in 2021. We ended the season once again losing in the league to Real Madrid, but with a very strong 4-game win streak at the end without conceding another goal. 23 points behind Real Madrid, who still won 36 out of 38 games, which is absolutely insane. Agony, though, is your top scorer of the league, an incredible triumph. Across the season, he got 43 goals in 58 games, but Carl Malmquist was easily the MVP for me, with 23 goals and 26 assists. The 24-year-old Swede was exceptional for us this season and was the catalyst for all of our success, I'm sure. The board, however, only given us £24 million, so we don't have much to build around with him to catch Real Madrid. And Klopp still isn't going anywhere, with him being very satisfied with life at the minute. We did it, folks. We won the Copa del Rey for Villarreal. It took just one goal to beat the champions Real Madrid in the final, giving the club only their second ever major trophy. In the league, though, it was only a second place finish and 23 points behind Real Madrid, who only lost and drew one game all season. And their manager Jurgen Klopp isn't going anywhere for now. So we've got to build on this team to try and even compete with them. Bit hard to do that, though, when there's only £23 million in the transfer budget.
Sorry, what?
Agony, our top scorer, won a few awards this season, but he isn't exactly that good, is he? Especially because my scouts found this young Argentine striker from Boca Juniors who could be a lot better and might not cost too much. You ain't gonna like this, but I'm offering out Iago to see if anybody wants to buy him. I feel like selling him allows me to bring in more players at a cheaper cost, so I'm trying to get as much as possible for him. I'm also going to offer out Svoboda as well for the same reasons. Pesic has developed much quicker, so I need to think about strengthening his support in midfield. Offers came in for Svoboda, and I managed to negotiate a really good deal. This could give us a rather large wallet to bring in a few more talents. And although Svoboda rejected a move, Iago is in fact leaving. One of two midfielders I'm interested in bringing in for midfield is this Valencia midfielder Antonio Perez. Not much defensively, but a very good creative midfielder. The other is probably my preferable choice though in De La Fuente at Newcastle. More of a holding midfielder, so I put a bid in. But he wasn't even prepared to talk to us after we got a deal accepted for 35 million. So the task of closing down Real Madrid, who also won the Champions League by the way, isn't going down too well. We just need that one last trophy, the Spanish League title, to complete Glory Hunter. So I ended up going for the Valencia midfielder Antonio Perez instead, and we got the deal done. As well as the striker Manuel Caballo from Boca. I genuinely think he could challenge Agony this season at just 11.5 million. Next through the door was a Croatian striker who I believe will be better as a number 10 in Ivor Straki. Again, only costing around £12 million from Zagreb after scoring 12 goals last season. Although that did leave us in a predicament in our maximum squad salary being too high to register all of the players. It seemed like we didn't have enough players though when the first fixture came around, and we had 3 injuries and 2 suspensions to the first team players, and we were forced to fill the subs bench with youngsters. That didn't stop us from playing some beautiful football against Celta Vigo in the opening day, and Agony was showing off why he is still our number 1 guy up front for now. He even got the second to close the game out, and at this point both clubs were down to 10 men with a red card each, which only opened more space on the pitch for us to exploit and score a third. We then rejected a bid from Spurs for our defender we signed last year in Garitano. He also put in a man of the match performance in the next match away to Osasuna, but was unable to prevent them from scoring an equaliser. And the set piece police will be back in the comment section as he scores 2 against Sevilla in the last game of the summer. But chill out, you bunch of Karens. We won 6-0 and already scored 3 goals before Garitano's first. We are of course already trailing Real Madrid, however. But the Champions League fixtures are in, and it feels like we play Manchester City and Chelsea every single season at this point. Despite signing the Argentine striker, I stuck by Agony as a starter because he just kept scoring goals. Although that goal against Atletico Madrid came in a 3-2 defeat, where we also went down to 9 men with 2 red cards. Didn't matter what the competition was though, Agony just kept scoring. And even when he didn't, and played bad, we still won so comfortably. And then he'd come back the next game and score some more goals, and he just seemed to always be in the right place at the right time, and he banged in a hat-trick in just 15 minutes, whilst also picking up a fourth in second half. He needed a rest though in the Champions League game, and we lost to Chelsea. So although we aren't quite cutting it at the start of the season, it definitely isn't down to our main striker from last season. I can't pinpoint what it is though. Unfortunately, we took another defeat in the Champions League to Manchester City, our other former club, but again, we won that competition twice already. And our main focus is on the league and our pursuit of Real Madrid, and we continue to keep winning games. And then I spoke too soon and completely jinxed us. And with Real Madrid and Barcelona as our first two games in November, we end October with 2 defeats in the league. Also, now 4 points behind Real Madrid, who have a game in hand on us as well. But it only took 7 minutes for Real to break us down and open the scoring through Skibicki. Real stayed ahead until we broke down the right wing, and the ball fell to Malmquist, who was fast enough to react and slot in an equaliser. But it wasn't our day at the Bernabeu, and the champions took the 3 points in the second half. But I don't think even Jurgen Klopp could predict the result of the next match against Barcelona. And to give you an idea, so maybe you'd like to have a guess before I show you, Agony scored 2 goals in the first half alone, and that was just half the goals he scored on this day. Because we battered Barcelona 7-0, which helped us transform our little mini bad spell and turn things around, beating Napoli and Bilbao as well. We are now 10 points off the champions though, which is annoying. But the run kept going and we kept winning through and into December, whilst also giving starts to Caballo more as he began to become more unhappy about his playtime, but he was also scoring goals. As was the Croatian striker who got the only goal against Valencia, as well as the opening goal against Arsenal in the Champions League, which was beautifully assisted by Albors, who won man of the match in a 4-0 win against the North London team. Agony picked up a small injury and Caballo then stepped up again and scored 2 goals in a 4-0 win against Granada around Christmas. And a win against Sociedad makes it 8 wins on the bounce. But it is back-to-back Ballon d'Ors for our friend Francisco, who at 28 is now worth over £250 million, 200 million more than I paid for him 8 seasons ago. More bids keep coming in for Svoboda, but he keeps refusing the contracts and deciding to stay. And we don't exactly have the money to improve the team this January without selling any players. Our winning run came to an end though in the league after a 2-0 defeat away to Celta Vigo, and we somehow got smacked up 7-2 by Galatasaray in the Champions League. But we won our last league phase game 3-0 against Slavia Prague, with Caballo scoring the first, only putting us in 11th place and meaning we have to play in the playoffs to progress. Real Madrid also shown weakness in January and they drew a few games, meaning even though we lost to Celta, we closed the gap on the champions down to just 4 points. Back-to-back Copa del Rey wins puts us in another semi-final. And with Real Madrid out of the competition, we are favourites to win it once again. We crashed out of the Champions League though after losing 3-0 to Everton in the first leg alone, and only being able to grab a draw at home, but hey, at least we keep winning in the league. And Agony was back scoring some fantastic goals as well. Madrid just weren't dropping any points though, and with a game in hand, we are 8 points behind going into March, which was the month where Bilbao almost knocked us out the Copa del Rey in the semi-finals if it wasn't for an excellent comeback starting with a very bizarre own goal, and followed by 2 goals from Garitano off the back of Malmquist's exceptional corners. And as we put ourselves into the Copa del Rey final, Barcelona had to overcome a 2-goal deficit if they wanted to meet us there. Svoboda cost us a goal within 5 minutes at home to Las Palmas, but let's just say he really owes Caballo a beer or 2 after the match, because that guy was insane and saved Svoboda's blushes, scoring 5 goals, 4 of which were still in the first half, and prevented us from dropping any silly points. We ended up defeating Las Palmas comfortably 5-1. And with more wins, a game against Betis was very much must win to keep our title hopes intact, as we once again faced Barcelona and Real Madrid in back-to-back games. After conceding an equaliser in the 92nd minute, Agony was our hero once again, scoring a winner in the 94th. Still 8 points behind, but with 2 games in hand and Real Madrid up soon, we could still overtake them with 3 wins. Barcelona also came back and won 3-0 against Sociedad to face us in this month's cup final. But what was a good sign was when we faced them in the league beforehand and Ramos gave us the lead going into half-time. The second half was much more lively and we scored right after the break, only for Barcelona to score from the penalty spot. Caballo was set free just 5 minutes later though and restored our 2-goal lead, before Barcelona scored their second from De La Fuente, the player who rejected us from Newcastle. But we got the last laugh when Ramos scored a very late 4th in this epic 4-2 win. giving us great confidence going into the Real Madrid game, and Caballo even gave us the advantage. But this is a much tighter game. Real scored an equaliser and we only got a point. It only took one goal to beat Atletico Madrid in the next game through Antonio Perez. And the gap remains 5 points with a game in hand to try to put the pressure on the league title with just 5 games to go. It's not as important as last season, but we once again lifted the Copa del Rey with a fantastic win against Barcelona, scoring 2 rather late goals to be fair, without letting them even find our net at all. And we kept winning with 2 more League 3 points with 4 games to go. Real Madrid still kept winning as well though, and the gap is once again 5 points. That was until we defeated Tenerife 4-0, while Real Madrid lost to Real Betis. And all of a sudden, a win in our game in hand puts us top of the league, which is exactly what we did, beating Getafe 4-0, and Gonzalo Ramos was rolling back the years, scoring a hat-trick with Monquist picking up the first goal after just 10 minutes on the clock. Could we keep this up and win the league? No, because we lost 3-1 to Espanyol. And of course, Real Madrid won another game, putting us 2 points behind with the final fixture to be played, and Real at home to Cadiz while we travel away to Granada. We did all we could, and ironically Svoboda scored the only goal of our final fixture. But Jurgen Klopp and his Real Madrid side got the job done, winning 2-1 and secured another league title. And that's just truly heartbreaking, getting that close to completing it all. It was in our hands, but of course we flunked it. And Real Madrid won the title once again. It was the first time in 4 years that they also didn't win the Champions League. But Jurgen Klopp isn't going anywhere anytime soon. He's standing in the way of us completing Glory Hunter, and we have just £32 million in the budget to work some magic to achieve this. Once again, there is interest in Agony, so I'm offering him out to see if we get any bids I can't simply turn down. Because Caballo improved massively and ended up scoring 29 goals last season in the end. But the only bids in for Agony was a measly £13 million, so he's sticking around for now. We will, however, be saying goodbye to Gonzalo Ramos, who announced his retirement aged 36. And our squad is already looking kinda small with him included in this list. I also think I'm going to try and branch away from the tactic we've been running the last couple of seasons and go for a 4 at the back with 2 strikers. And my first target is a new left back, and I have 2 options, with one being Prisca from Portugal. Or we go for an even cheaper option and Leandro of Brazil, who is a bit of a physical monster. So I decided to put a bid in, and I got an offer accepted for less than £9 million by Flamengo. And that was a really quick deal to get done, and the player was signed. So straight on to my next target, and again staying in South America for financial reasons really, we got an offer accepted for an attacking midfielder from River Plate called Lopez. And again, we got lucky and no big clubs came in to steal him from us, and we got a really quick deal done. Very happy with the player, especially for the price. Quality option this season. I finally managed to sell Svoboda too, as he left for Stuttgart for £16.25 million. Not bad considering we only paid £8 million for him. There was also some huge bids for Pesic coming in for £17 million, but he's just far too important for me to let him go, and I had to reject it. But I did sell centre-back João Fonseca to Monaco for £17 million, which isn't actually that bad for a backup centre-back and for 31 years old. And that allowed us to spend £28 million more on 3 new players, 2 coming from Copenhagen. Kenta Axvret will be a good squad player who can play across the back 3 and is only 21 years old with some great mental attributes. The other from Sweden is Mats Nyman, a central midfielder more suited to defensive midfield, who has fantastic physical attributes to be an engine in the centre of the pitch. The final player was transfer listed by Arsenal, and I see him was a very useful midfielder to get, seeing as he's only 20 years old and plays in both the attacking and defensive formations. Which led to us swiftly onto the tactic and the lineup for the first match of the season. We are rocking a 4-2-2 narrow system using 2 attacking midfielders in the centre instead of the usual wide position, and Malmquist is currently recovering, so drops out for now. And the first game of the season went very well. We scored some insane goals too, which you are seeing right now. Agony scored a great goal either side of halftime, and his runs, which were found both times by the exceptional assist, were obviously joyous too. New signing Juan Lopez with a direct free kick on his debut as well. The only blemish on this 7-0 win was the injury to Alballs, which put him out for the next 4 to 5 weeks. The following match started with Pesic having a penalty saved after just 2 minutes. Won 5-0 though, so it's all good. And I forgot all about it in the third game when Pesic got an unbelievable assist for Caballo in a 2-1 win against Celta. No surprise, we've got Chelsea again in the Champions League. Speaking of that competition, Caballo really stepped up the goals against Spurs, putting 4 past them and completely dominating their defence in the air. The Argentine striker is an absolute animal and the North London side just did not know how to handle him. And of course, after 4 league games and 4 league wins, we already head to the Bernabeu to face the champions. With Albor still out injured, we have almost a perfect starting 11, with Agony actually on the bench, with the Croatian striker in favour to partner Caballo and Nyman favoured over Perez for defensive duties. And that decision paid off because he found the Argentine striker to open the scoring with an insane goal. But Real Madrid pushed and eventually brought the game to a 1-1 draw in the 83rd minute. We followed it though with another away win against Sevilla with Agony scoring 2 goals. And then we lost to Monaco in the Champions League from a corner in the 86th minute. But 3 of us are on the top of La Liga, all on the same points with ourselves and Madrid being joined by Cadiz of all clubs. We then decided to just not concede any goals for the month and become a defensive monster. That's not to say we weren't scoring any either, and as a matter of fact, far from it. In October, we scored 26 goals in just 6 games, including 5 league matches, where we didn't even concede 1 goal. We didn't play anyone special, but that's still an impressive month to say the least, and bang in form to face a very tough November, including Barcelona. But good news, call your grannies, because Villarreal are currently top of La Liga by 4 points. We finally conceded a goal in the league when we gifted Atletico a breakthrough. We still beat them 2-1 however, so who really cares? Definitely not Barcelona player Emmanuel Clotti, who brainlessly got himself a straight red card in the first half against us. Even funnier because Malmquist scored the free kick from that very same tackle. And it was only a 1-0 win at the Camp Nou, where Barcelona only had 1 shot on target. Wasn't such a good result in the Champions League, as Chelsea beat us 3-2 though. And after Leandro, our new left back, scored an absolute worldie of a goal to level the score against Bilbao, they gave us our first league defeat of the season, scoring in the 8th and the 94th minute with a free kick. Sad times. Still top of the league though, so let's keep our titties in our tops for now, shall we? Okay, maybe I spoke too soon once again. Even after that horrendous home defeat though, we managed to pull off back-to-back 4-0s. And yet, we are still only good enough for, wait, 3rd place. Good thing is, it is now January and the board have backed us and given us more of a transfer budget. The bad news is, we lost our first match of the year to Valencia this time, who scored just 2 of their 3 shots on target. But I spent the money on bringing in a world-class midfielder called Federico from Newcastle for £47 million. He couldn't stop us from losing once again though.
Oh, God!
Luckily for us, Real Madrid had just lost to Bilbao, so it was none other than Real Betis who are currently sitting at the top, 7 points clear of us. We ended the month with 2 wins against Getafe and Celta Vigo, and February sees our next match against the champions in between the Champions League playoff ties. But we would actually face them far earlier than expected after winning our 4th round match in the Copa del Rey against Real Zaragoza, because we get them in the quarter-final, a game played at home where we give ourselves a very strong 2-goal lead on the 67th minute. But of course, this seems to be the season of self-destruction, and we concede thanks to a lousy clearance. And an even bigger boot to the testicles, we concede an equaliser in the 94th minute. All good though, because in extra time we turned up like 1970s Brazil and played incredible football and scored to knock them out 3-2. But it seemed we were making a habit of throwing away 2-goal leads and conceding extremely late on, only to cruise through to the round of 16 after winning the second leg 3-0 without even leaving the second gear. Some of these goals looked absolutely incredibly easy to score though. However, the most important game of the month was that Real Madrid league fixture in which we took the lead after just 20 minutes in, and we made it 2-0 from the penalty spot. And our run of being crap while 2-0 up continues and Real Madrid score. There was a 4th goal, but you'll never believe it until you see it. It went to Villarreal, and we send Real Madrid home with a 3-1 defeat. That seemed to really get our groove back because we stuffed Sevilla and Lugo both 6-0 in the next 2 league games, with Caballo scoring 7 goals, as well as another 4 in the semi-final of the Copa del Rey first leg. We are still in 3rd though. Look closely because we have 2 games in hand however, and only 3 points off top. It's in our hands again. We've just got to keep winning games. Keep winning games just like that. Back-to-back away wins. We love to see it. In fact, an insane month. 4 league wins. Huge Champions League round of 16 triumph over our former club. And we move into April with, of course, Manchester City in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, because we seem to play them every season. But doing it from top spot in the league on the same points as Real, but with a game in hand. Also Caballo on 28 league goals, tearing up the Golden Boot race. A second leg 0-0 draw after the first 5-1 win puts us in the Copa del Rey final for the 3rd season in a row. And from being 3-1 up against City in the Champions League, Patrick Gerrard scored 2 goals in injury time to level things up in the first leg. But straight from the kickoff, Caballo scored a 4th, and we won 4-3. And beat them in their second leg too. We well and truly embarrassed Barcelona in the league during April, completely dominating the game and continuing our good run with a 3-0 win. Guys, we are on the run of a lifetime. Betis up next to close out April. But we still cannot quite shake off Real Madrid though. In other news, and back to the Champions League, we drew AC Milan in the semi-final, with the first leg being played in Spain. And don't mind me, we are just sitting back, relaxing with a beverage and watching us score a lot of goals in the same game. All against AC Milan in the Champions League semi-final first leg. Yeah, we won 7-0, and I've already booked our flights for the final. But let's focus on the Real Betis match first, because the league title is up for grabs, and oh my god, what is happening and how are we 2-0 down? That is not what we need right now. Please tell me we aren't going to throw this away. That was probably revenge for us defeating them in the Copa del Rey final 1-0. Which, yeah, I completely forgot to mention after the Milan game shocked me too much. Like poetry though, Real Madrid are also the team attempting to stop us from winning the Champions League. Our game in hand was against Valencia, and it was a perfect opportunity to get our revenge after they defeated us earlier on in the season. And that's exactly what we did, stuffing them 5-0. So with those 3 wins in the league, we have just 2 league matches left, and we are currently sat top of the league on just goal difference alone. Unbelievably, in the penultimate match, Elche not only took the lead, but go into half-time 2-0 up. Surely we cannot throw this away against 10 men as well. But within 9 minutes of the second half kicking off, we score from Pesic, Strachey gets an equaliser, and then immediately scores a 3rd, and then a 4th, and we comfortably win the match. While also having 50 shots on their goal, with 21 on target. But Real Madrid also won 5-0. We just need to win our final game against Cadiz, while Real Madrid, they have Barcelona away. But from the moment our goalkeeper sent the ball long, it was never in doubt. Caballo brought the ball down from the heavens beautifully, pushed it away from the defender and smashed it past the goalkeeper for our first of the day. And from that, we continued to enjoy ourselves, knowing what was about to happen, scoring 2 more goals and confirming ourselves La Liga champions, and of course, winning the final trophy of the Glory Hunter series. But of course, we have the Champions League final to win too. And after the game stayed 0-0 for 94 minutes, Agony popped up with a winner. And we had our 3rd Champions League with 3 different clubs. And speaking of 3s, we also won the treble this season. So with 25 major trophies won in 18 seasons, including 3 Champions Leagues, 7 different clubs, Roma, Chelsea, Manchester City, Leverkusen, Leipzig, PSG, and of course finally Villarreal, we have won all 5 top divisions in Europe, the 5 biggest cup competitions in Europe, and of course the Europa League and the Champions League. After managing many quality players from the beginning at Tammy Abraham to Erling Haaland to Kylian Mbappe, Francisco of course, alongside many others, it has been a fantastic journey that I really hope you have enjoyed as much as I have, and I'll see you on the next one.